Chapter 780. Tianling Palace. Huayang Palace. Shang Guanwan leaned into Jiang Yuqing's arms and tightly gripped his arm, as if she was grabbing onto her last life-saving straw. Yuqing, help me. Help me. Only you can help me. She kept spitting out blood, and her voice was hoarse and hopeless. She looked like a wretched ghost. Jiang Yuqing had never seen Shang Guanwan like this. He suppressed the disgust in his heart and tried to push her away a little, but Shang Guanwan hugged him very tightly, and he couldn't ignore her. Jiang Yuqing was worried that if he overdid it, it would cause a huge shock to her, so he could only hold it in. He looked at the light flowing under Shang Guanwan's skin and knitted his brows tightly. What exactly did you provoke? He originally thought that after Shang Guanwan hit underground, she personally took action against those people. But he didn't expect her to use those tree roots. Thinking of Yang Qiner, who chose to self-destruct previously and had a rotten and bloody aura on her, his face turned cold. You attacked Yang Qiner previously, didn't you? Shang Guanwan felt very guilty and shifted her gaze. I only borrowed a little of her strength, but I also don't know what those tree roots are. To Jiang Yuqing, Shang Guanwan was really too stupid to treat Yang Qiner in Xiling City. So many eyes are watching her openly and secretly. Once someone finds out, she can't even keep her status as the third princess, let alone the throne. But now that Yang Qiner is already dead, there's no point in pursuing this. Once outsiders see Shang Guanwan's current appearance, they will definitely think of Yang Qiner back then. So no matter what, I have to think of a way to solve Shang Guanwan's problem. Jiang Yuqing held his breath and looked at Shang Guanwan solemnly. Sit up first and give me your hand. When Shang Guanwan heard this, her eyes suddenly lit up. She quickly struggled to sit up in his arms and reached out her hand. Jiang Yuqing glanced at it and saw a hand as thin as a skeleton. It was stained with messy bloodstains which made him nauseous. Jiang Yuqing forced himself to restrain himself. He stretched out his hand and slowly placed it against Shang Guanwan's as origin power surged around him. Gradually, there seemed to be a layer of black mist spreading out from his eyes, gradually dyeing them black. Even the sclera of his eyes had turned black. At first glance, they looked like two dark holes. It was a little horrifying. A stream of origin power slowly entered Shang Guanwan's body. More than half of her Yuan meridian had been repaired, so the transition of origin power could be considered smooth. At this moment, the dark green light had already flowed to her shoulder. Jiang Yuqing controlled his own power and approached bit by bit. A trace of pain appeared on Shang Guanwan's face. Wherever Jiang Yuqing's power passed, it was as if it was being forcefully cut by a knife. If there were outsiders present at this moment, they would be shocked to discover that the aura of the origin power that Jiang Yuqing had sent out was clearly stronger than his current realm. Logically speaking, this was definitely not a power that he could use by himself. However, Shang Guanwan seemed to have already known this. She was not the least bit surprised by this. Instead, she forcefully endured the pain. When that power slowly approached Shang Guanwan's shoulder and was about to clash with the dark green light, the latter suddenly exploded. Bang! Following the explosion, Shang Guanwan's body shook, and flesh and blood splattered from her shoulder. She was momentarily caught off guard, and was shocked by this sudden change. Fear and panic instantly surged into her heart. After a short moment of being stunned, the intense pain spread. Shang Guanwan was in so much pain that her face turned pale, and she almost fainted. Jiang Yuqing, who was nearby, was also shocked. This explosion happened too suddenly, so much so that he did not even have time to react or dodge, before he was directly knocked down by the tyrannical and violent airflow. His chest shook, and a strong smell of blood surged up between his lips and teeth. However, he did not have time to care about his injuries, and immediately looked up. Shang Guanwan fell to the ground. Her left shoulder had completely festered and turned into a bloody mess. If it had been a little more to the side, her entire arm would probably have been broken. As for that dark green light, it had already dissipated without a trace. Jiang Yuqing was still in shock, and his heart was beating crazily. Just now, what exactly happened? Shang Guanwan's painful moans pulled Jiang Yuqing back from his thoughts. He suppressed the surging blood in his chest and walked towards Shang Guanwan. Shang Guanwan was lying on the ground, covered in blood. However, some of the energy that had been devoured earlier seemed to have returned. Her body, which was originally so thin that only bones were left, was gradually recovering. Although she still looked a lot thinner than before, it was still much better than her skeleton-like appearance. Shang Guanwan's mind was blank. Looking at Jiang Yuqing, who appeared in front of her, she opened her mouth, but could not speak. Jiang Yuqing frowned. With Shang Guanwan like this, it was impossible for her to go out and meet anyone. There were still so many people waiting in Minghua Palace, and they could not afford to waste time. He took out a jade bottle and poured out 2 pills. One was for himself, and the other was for Shang Guanwan. This is to regulate your blood and qi and nourish your body. Take it first. Also, according to your current condition, you can't go to Minghua Palace anymore. Later, let Chani come in to take care of you. Also, send Zhou Mingxi into the palace to check on your injuries. You must not leave any problems. Shang Guanwan opened her mouth and looked at him with a sorrowful gaze. I will handle Minghua Palace. Tell the public that you were injured while getting medicine for His Majesty and need to recuperate. In a short period of time, Jiang Yuqing had already made his decision. Shang Guanwan wanted to say something, but hesitated. In the end, she nodded with difficulty to express her agreement. She also understood that this was the only way in the current situation. Then Jiang Yuqing turned and left. Shang Guanwan closed her eyes in despair and resentment. She could clearly feel that more than half of the strength that she had accumulated with great difficulty had been used up after this torture. She just wanted to repair her Yuan meridian and become an expert again. Why was it so difficult? That light, what was going on? After Jiang Yuqing handed Shang Guanwan to Chani, he returned to Minghua Palace. Everyone thought that Shang Guanwan would come with Jiang Yuqing this time. But in the end, they only saw Jiang Yuqing alone. They could not help but look at each other with doubtful expressions. Jiang Yuqing walked in front of everyone with a trace of worry and concern. I'm afraid the 3rd princess won't be able to come today. She was injured while getting medicine for His Majesty. Now she has to rest in bed for a few days. Please forgive her. After a short period of silence, Jian Shai asked, what kind of medicine is it that the 3rd princess risked her life to get it? Jiang Yuqing paused. Dancing Lotus. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 781. Everyone was shocked. Jian Shai was stunned for a moment before continuing to ask, Dancing Lotus? Is it the legendary Dancing Lotus that can revive a dead person? Jiang Yuqing nodded. Yes. If not for this, the 3rd princess wouldn't be willing to take the risk to retrieve it. Song Wuan said excitedly, the 3rd princess is really filial to His Majesty. After retrieving this Dancing Lotus, His Majesty's health will definitely improve. Jiang Yuqing frowned imperceptibly, and his tone was slightly cold. Sect Master Song is right, but it's a pity that we haven't successfully retrieved the Dancing Lotus. Song Wuan's face instantly flushed red. Many people around couldn't help but laugh secretly. He flattered the wrong horse. He's really something. Song Wuan felt that he had lost face and muttered. I see. I think that the Dancing Lotus is a rare treasure in the world. It must be very difficult to retrieve it successfully. I thought too simply. Jiang Yuqing couldn't be bothered to argue with him so much. He nodded and said, You're right. What you said is correct. The Dancing Lotus is indeed extremely difficult to approach. Elder Qiushi died because of that Dancing Lotus. The moment he said that, the huge Minghua Palace instantly quietened down. Everyone's expression changed simultaneously. They didn't expect the matter to be so troublesome. Elder Qiushi was an elder of the royal family, and was naturally very powerful. Even he couldn't do it and died just like that. It could be seen how dangerous that Dancing Lotus was. That Dancing Lotus grows in the mirror lake of the Dahuang Swamp. Originally, we wanted to pluck it and bring it back for His Majesty to use. However, that mirror lake is a little strange, and even Elder Qiushi wasn't spared. Thus, we were worried about the safety of the soldiers and disciples of the various families and sects. So we made a prompt decision and chose to return. Jiang Yuqing's words not only explained the reason for Shang Guanwan's injury, but also explained the reason for everyone's sudden return. This time, they returned in a hurry and would definitely cause a huge commotion in the entire Xiling city. There would be countless guesses and rumors in the open and in the dark. Jiang Yuqing didn't want to be criticized because of this matter. I see. No wonder Her Highness the Third Princess brought her men back so quickly. She did it out of consideration for everyone's safety. What's so strange about Mirror Lake? Why is it so dangerous? After a short period of silence, everyone started to discuss. Obviously, the various guesses and complaints about Shangguan and the others from before had quietly dissipated at this time. In such a situation, who could reprimand them? Jiang Yuqing looked around and waited for everyone to finish talking before he said, "What's the matter? Therefore, we came back this time. On one hand, we don't want to cause unnecessary casualties. On the other hand, we want to find a few experts to go to the Great Desolate Swamp again and join forces to retrieve the Dancing Lotus." The hall fell silent. What do you all think? After Jiang Yuqing asked, no one spoke for a while. Everyone secretly exchanged glances with each other as they pondered. Without a doubt, a heavenly treasure like the Dancing Lotus was fatally attractive to anyone. But at the same time, they had to consider their safety. Even Elder Qiushi had died there. How many people could guarantee that they would be able to return safe and sound? Most importantly, even if they succeeded in retrieving the Dancing Lotus, they would still have to give it to His Majesty in the end. What could they get? Everyone present was an important figure of high status, and each of them was very shrewd. They either represented the entire clan or the entire sect. If something happened to them, who knew how many people would be implicated? Therefore, even if they were indeed loyal to His Majesty, when it came to their own lives, they still had to think carefully. No one spoke. The air seemed to have frozen. Jiang Yuqing frowned imperceptibly. He had expected that a large portion of these people might not be willing to take this risk. But he didn't expect that everyone would be like this. He hesitated for a moment and said, "I know that this trip is dangerous and that everyone has concerns, but that Dancing Lotus is simply too important to His Majesty. In addition to the corresponding reward, apart from the Dancing Lotus, the other herbs found will also belong to each of you." Many people's eyes lit up. If that was the case, they could still consider it. The reason why Elder Qiushi died was that he was careless at that time. Secondly, he went alone with no one to support him. You are all the top powerhouses of the Tianling dynasty. If you all join forces, it shouldn't be a problem to take the Dancing Lotus, right? There was no doubt that Jiang Yuqing's words made many people's minds waver. Since the Dancing Lotus had appeared in Mirror Lake, there might be other treasures. As long as they were fully prepared, even if they really couldn't get it, they would still have the ability to escape. They wouldn't follow in Elder Qiushi's footsteps. At this moment a voice sounded, "I'm willing to go." Hearing this, everyone looked over and found that the person who spoke was actually Yuqi Song. Everyone, including Jiang Yuqing, was shocked. Everyone present was likely to go, but they felt that Yuqi Song was the least likely to go. There were only a few people left in the Chongshu Pavilion now, and they were all relying on him, the pavilion master. If something happened to him, wouldn't the Chongshu Pavilion be completely finished? Besides, Chu Luyue and the others had died in the Dahuang Swamp, and he actually wanted to go to that sad place. What was he thinking? However, facing everyone's doubtful eyes, Yuqi Song's expression was calm and indifferent, and he didn't care. He had made up his mind. Jian Shai touched his chin. As a celestial physician, I naturally have to go and see what the Dancing Lotus looks like. I'll go too. At this time, Chu Luyue naturally didn't know that in Xiling City, thousands of miles away, a group of people was planning to come to the Dahuang Swamp again. She was trapped in this small place, and the only thing she could do was cultivate. Taizu glanced at the hourglass beside him. Counting the time, less than 10 days had passed outside. However, more than half a year had passed here. Chu Luyue cultivated day and night here, as if she had entered a meditative state. At first, Taizu was worried that Chu Luyue wouldn't be used to staying here for a long time. However, he didn't expect her to be so determined. She said that she wanted to cultivate, but she only did this one thing wholeheartedly. If it were someone else, they might have felt bored and depressed long ago. However, Chulua didn't. Even Taizu was amazed by her patience. He couldn't help but be curious. I wonder how powerful Chulua will be when she comes out of here. Time passed slowly. Qin Yi and the others, who were waiting in the mystic forest, had already endured for nearly half a month. At the start, they would still guess when Chulua would come out, but they basically wouldn't say anything now. The only thing they could do was to cultivate while waiting silently. However, this tranquility was quickly broken. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Web. Chapter 782. Someone entered the mystic forest again. Chini didn't know about the situation at Mirror Lake and Red Moon Desert. However, he stayed in the mystic forest for a long time and left traces in many places. If anything were to happen, he would be able to sense it. Someone's here. In the quiet atmosphere, Qin Yi's words were very prominent. The few of them looked over. Lei Laosi frowned. Who else would come at this time? Even if someone barged into Dahuang Swamp, they probably wouldn't come in after seeing the mystic forest's current state, right? Qin Yi's expression became serious. The other party isn't weak. Seeing his reaction, the few of them became serious. Big brother, how many of them are here? Should be 5. Qin Yi narrowed his long and narrow eyes. What he didn't say was that the other party's aura was very familiar. Lei Laosi scratched his head. Why don't I go and test them first? No need. They won't come here. Qin Yi paused and stopped Lei Laosi's actions. At the same time, the few figures that entered the forest not long ago stopped. It was Jiang Yuqing and the others who came again. Other than him, there were 4 other people. They were Yuqi Song Jianshai, Song Wan and Grand Tutor Xiahorong. There was no need to explain why the first few people were here. Xiahorong was the Grand Tutor and had always been doted on by His Majesty. In addition, he wasn't weak himself, so logically speaking, he was one of the people who should come. This time, Mu Qinghe didn't bring the Black Cavalry along. There were too many casualties previously, so he still had many things to settle. Also, Dahuang Swamp was extremely dangerous, and normal people would only die if they came here. Not only would they not be of help, but they might even become a burden. The few of them stood still and looked at the scene in front of them with complicated expressions. Jiang Yuqing said, "You've all seen it. As you can see, the mystic forest has been reduced to such a state. It was very dangerous back then. Originally, he wanted to take them directly to Mirror Lake, but Yuqi Song said that she wanted to have a look at the mystic forest, so they came. Anyone could guess that Yuqi Song still wanted to look for his disciples. Song Wan originally didn't want to agree, but the others didn't say anything, so he could only follow along. Jianshai looked around. Elder Song, I heard that Hong Yu and the rest are still in the mystic forest. Why don't we look for them? Then go to Mirror Lake? It won't take much time anyway. Anyway, it was better to find as many as possible. It was always good to have one more survivor. Since he had already said so much, who could say no? Song Wan was very unhappy and looked at Jiang Yuqing. They had come here to look for the dancing lotus, but why had they come to the mystic forest to look for someone? She originally thought that Jiang Yuqing would speak up to stop her, but to her surprise, even Jiang Yuqing agreed to it. Helpless, Song Wan could only swallow his words. Jiang Yuqing slowly clenched his fists in his sleeves, and a trace of nervousness arose in his heart. His rationality told him that it was impossible for Chu Luiyue to still be alive, but deep in his heart, there seemed to be an indescribable desire. If she's really still alive, a bright and dazzling smile appeared in his mind. Shengguan Wan had already become like that, and he didn't know if she could recover. He didn't know when it started, but when facing Shengguan Wan, the remaining patience in his heart had already been exhausted. He suddenly thought of something and looked at Yuqi Song, seemingly unintentionally asking, Elder Song, did anyone inform Chu Liyue's fiancé about what happened here? Digression 6. 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 783. Everyone was shocked. Jianshai froze for a moment before he continued to ask, Whirling Lotus? Is it the legendary whirling lotus that can bring the dead back to life? Jiang Yuqing nodded his head. Yes. If it weren't for this, the third princess wouldn't have taken the risk to retrieve it. Song Wuan said excitedly. The third princess is truly filial to His Majesty. If we retrieve the whirling lotus, His Majesty's health will definitely improve. Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. His tone was slightly cold. Leader Song is right. However, it's a pity that the whirling lotus hasn't been retrieved yet. Song Wuan's face suddenly turned the color of a pig's liver. Many people around them couldn't help but laugh secretly. His bootlicking had failed miserably, and he was truly to blame. Song Wuan felt that he had lost face. He mumbled, I see. The whirling lotus is a rare treasure in the world. It must be very difficult to retrieve it. I was too naive. Jiang Yuqing was too lazy to argue with him. He nodded his head and said, You're right. The whirling lotus is indeed extremely difficult to get close to. Elder Qiushi died to retrieve the whirling lotus. As soon as he said this, the huge clear flower palace suddenly quieted down. Everyone's expression changed. They didn't expect the situation to be so troublesome. Elder Qiushi was an elder of the royal family. His strength was undeniable. Even he didn't manage to do it and died. This showed how dangerous the whirling lotus was. The whirling lotus grows in the mirror lake of the Great Desolation Swamp. Originally, we wanted to pluck it and bring it back for His Majesty to use. However, that mirror lake was a little strange. Even Elder Qiushi couldn't escape. Therefore, we were worried about the safety of the soldiers and the disciples of the various sects. So we made a prompt decision and chose to come back. Jiang Yuqing's words not only explained the reason for Shangguanwan's injury, but also the reason why everyone suddenly came back. This time they came back in a hurry. It was bound to cause a great commotion in the entire West Hill City. Who knew how many guesses and rumors would appear in the open and in the dark? Jiang Yuqing didn't want to be criticized because of this. I see. No wonder Her Highness the Third Princess brought people back so quickly. She was thinking about everyone's safety. What's so strange about that mirror lake? Why is it so dangerous? After a short period of silence, everyone began to discuss among themselves. Obviously, all the guesses and complaints about Shangguanwan and the others had quietly disappeared. Under such circumstances, who could reprimand them? Jiang Yuqing looked around, and when everyone was almost done speaking, he said, Therefore, we came back this time not to cause unnecessary casualties. On the other hand, we wanted to find a few experts to go to the Great Desolate Swamp again and work together to retrieve the whirling lotus. The main hall fell silent. What do you think? After Jiang Yuqing asked, no one spoke for a while. Everyone secretly exchanged glances with each other, each of them thinking. There was no doubt that a treasure like the whirling lotus was fatally attractive to everyone. But at the same time, they had to consider their safety. Even Elder Qiushi died there. So how many people could guarantee that they would be able to return safely and without worry? Most importantly, even if they took the risk and successfully retrieved the whirling lotus, they would still have to offer it to His Majesty. What could they gain? Everyone present was a big shot of high status, and every one of them was very astute. They either represented the entire clan or the entire sect. If something happened to them, it was unknown how many people would be implicated. Therefore, even if they were loyal and devoted to His Majesty, they still had to consider things that involved their own lives. No one spoke. The air seemed to have frozen. Jiang Yuqing's brows furrowed imperceptibly. He had expected that a large portion of these people would not be willing to take the risk, but he did not expect everyone to be like this. He hesitated for a moment and said, I know that this trip is dangerous, and everyone has their concerns, but the whirling lotus is simply too important to His Majesty. Apart from the corresponding reward, apart from the whirling lotus, all the other herbs found will belong to everyone. Many people's eyes lit up. If that was the case, they could still consider it. Elder Qiushi died because he was careless at the time, and because he went alone without anyone to support him. Everyone here is the most powerful cultivator in Tianling Dynasty. If you all work together, surely it won't be a problem to take down the whirling lotus? Jiang Yucheng's words undoubtedly caused many people's hearts to waver. Since the whirling lotus could appear in Mirror Lake, there might be other treasures as well. As long as they made sufficient preparations, even if they really couldn't get it, they still had the ability to escape, and wouldn't follow in Elder Chiyoshi's footsteps. Right at this moment, a voice rang out. This old man is willing to go. Hearing that, everyone looked over, and discovered that the person who spoke was actually Yuchi Song. Everyone, including Jiang Yucheng, was taken aback. Everyone present could possibly go, except for Yuchi Song. They felt that he was the least likely to go. There were only so few people left in Clear Void Pavilion now, and they were all relying on him, the pavilion master, to support them. Once something happened to him, wouldn't this Clear Void Pavilion be completely finished? Besides, Chu Luiyue and the others had all died in the Great Desolate Swamp, and he actually wanted to go to that sad place. What on earth was he thinking? However, in the face of everyone's doubtful gazes, Yuchi Song's expression was calm and indifferent. He had made up his mind. Jian Shai rubbed his chin. As the heavenly doctor, I naturally have to go and see what that whirling lotus looks like. I'll go too. At this moment, Chu Luiyue naturally did not know that in West Hill City, thousands of miles away, there was a group of people plotting to rush to the Great Desolate Swamp again. She was trapped in this small place, and the only thing she could do was cultivate. The founding father glanced at the hourglass beside him. Calculating the time, less than 10 days had passed in the outside world. However, more than half a year had passed in this place. Here Chu Luiyue cultivated day and night. Her entire person seemed to have entered a meditative state. At first, the founding father was worried that Chu Luiyue would not be used to staying here for a long time. However, he did not expect her to be so determined. When she said that she wanted to cultivate, she wholeheartedly focused on this one thing. If it was someone else, they would have already felt bored and depressed. However, Chu Luiyue did not. Even the great ancestor was amazed by his patience. He could not help but be curious. He did not know how strong Chu Luiyue would be when she left this place. Time passed slowly. Qin Yi and the others who were waiting in the illusory fog forest had already endured for nearly half a month. At first, they would guess when Chu Luiyue would come out. However, they basically did not say anything now. The only thing they could do was to cultivate while waiting in silence. However, this tranquility was soon broken. Mobile users, please browse and read. For a better reading experience, please visit the website. Chapter 784. Yuchi Song glanced at Jiang Yucheng strangely, and frowned slightly. Why did he suddenly mention Lu Yu's fiancé at this time? Not to mention that Chu Luiyue's situation had not been thoroughly investigated. Even if something really happened, her fiancé was not in West Hill now. How could he inform him? Not yet. Yuchi Song's expression was indifferent. Why did you suddenly mention him? Jiang Yucheng sized up the other party's expression, and knew that the other party had doubts in his heart. Speaking of which, it's quite a coincidence. I've met that person once before. I heard that he is a prince of country Yaochun. When he was in Yaochun, the two of them were engaged. However, he doesn't seem to be in good health. I was just thinking that if he suddenly found out about what happened here, I'm afraid he wouldn't be able to bear it. I didn't expect eldest young Master Jiang to know so much about these things. You know almost better than me, his master. Yuchi Song seemed to say unintentionally. Jiang Yucheng's expression stiffened. It was indeed a little strange for him to know about these things with his status. Oh, Elder Song, don't misunderstand. I don't mean anything else. You also know that Chu Luiyue is very famous in West Hill City. There must be many people who are very curious about everything about her. Even I am no exception. Jiang Yucheng straightforwardly admitted to this point. Because there was nothing to criticize. A prodigy who was outstanding in the entire West Hill would definitely attract a lot of attention. It would be strange if Jiang Yucheng did not know anything about her. As for her fiancé, I met him by coincidence and asked about him. Elder Song, you won't mind, right? Yuchi Song's expression was calm. Eldest young Master Jiang has his reasons for doing things. These words made Jiang Yucheng a little flustered, as if they were mocking him. But he still endured it. Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's find them first. Jiang Yucheng did not get any useful information from Yuchi Song, so he simply did not say anything more. Yuchi-song was an old fox and not easy to deal with. As for Chu Liuyue's so-called fiancé, he was just a sickly person, so why should he care about him? The next time they met, he would deal with it directly. This small interlude came to an end. They continued to walk into the forest. However, after about an hour, they still did not see anyone. Jian Shai frowned and looked at a withered tree in front of him. Wait, have we been here before? Yuchi-song said. You noticed it too? Jian Shai nodded and looked around. It seems like we've been running around in circles for the past hour. No wonder he couldn't find anything. Jiang Yuqing was stunned. Been here before? Are you sure? Jian Shai snorted and lifted his chin. I took a closer look at the patterns on the bark of that tree earlier. I'm sure that it has circled back. Xiahou Rong was shocked. Does this mean that we're going around in circles? The few of them fell silent. The situation couldn't be more clear. It was fine if one person saw wrongly, but since Jian Shai and Yuchi-song said so, there must be a problem. Even Song Wan was frowning. Jiang Yuqing also looked around in confusion. Strange, this didn't happen when we came here before. They originally thought that the miasma and tree roots were the most dangerous things in the mystic forest, but they didn't expect to encounter such trouble. Someone seems to have set up a Xian formation here, but at the same time, they also used some Chimen Duanjia to block the people who came in. Jian Shai murmured and looked at Yuchi-song. Elder Song, among us, you're the only one who has some research on this. Can you see anything? Yuchi-song specialized in celestial physician, but he also had some understanding of these strange things. The few of them looked at him. Yuchi-song was silent for a moment and shook his head. The other party is proficient in this, and has set up a meticulous plan. I can't solve it either. Hearing his words, the others were all stunned. Jian Shai couldn't hide his disappointment. Then won't we be trapped here forever? What about the children? Yuchi-song turned around and pointed in a direction. That's the direction we came from. As long as we walk in that direction, we can leave this place. However, it'll be extremely difficult to enter. Jiang Yuqing's eyes suddenly moved. Could this be Qin Yi and the rest's plan? Who's Qin Yi? Xiahou Rong asked. The various aristocratic families didn't send anyone over, so they didn't know much about what happened here. Jiang Yuqing gave a simple explanation. Yuchi-song looked down thoughtfully and didn't say anything. Jian Shai asked curiously, if it's really them, why do they have to do this? Previously, Zhu Hong and the rest said that Qin Yi and the rest treated the children quite well. You can't judge a book by its cover. Song Wan interrupted him and mocked him. If they're really decent people, why would they stay in Dahuang Swamp for such a long time for no reason? Besides, Chu Luyue snatched the 9-colored heavenly pheasant that they've been protecting. They might harbor a grudge and do something. Jian Shai glanced at him in frustration. This Song Wan really can't say anything decent. He's just afraid that others are better than him. My disciples have suffered heavy casualties, so I can't let everyone else be the same. Yuchi-song suddenly said, let's go. Let's leave first and head to Mirror Lake since the other party doesn't want us to enter. Jiang Yuqing was a little hesitant and wanted to say something. However, since even Yuchi-song didn't intend to continue walking in, he naturally didn't have a say. The group quickly returned the way they came from. After walking for a long distance, Yuchi-song finally heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. He turned around with a deep gaze. So that person is actually back. Jiang Yuqing probably didn't expect this even in his dreams, right? Kacha. A fingernail-sized fragment fell from the crystal again. At this point, most of the crystal that was originally the size of 2 palms had been swallowed, and only the centermost piece was left. The 2 Tian baby was wrapped in it, and only a thin layer of shell was left on the outside. It was as though it would shatter with a knock. Of course, this energy was too massive. After Chu Luyue swallowed it, she didn't completely convert it into her own energy. Most of it was still stored in the water droplet. Despite so, Chu Luyue's abilities still increased by a lot. After staying in this space for nearly a year, she finally touched the barrier of peak stage 5. Chu Luyue melted and swallowed that fragment. She had done this countless times, and could be said to be as smooth as flowing water. Then, she looked at the opposite side. As long as she peeled off one more piece, the Tian baby would be exposed. The heaven-wrecking holy seed seemed to have realized this as well, and began to become restless. The surrounding space also started to vibrate faintly. Chu Liyue had a thought. Crack! A crack appeared. A vast and majestic ancient aura erupted from it. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 785. Song Wuan flew on his sword and flew over Mirror Lake. Looking down, it was a large piece of floating ice reflecting a cold luster. Looking from here, he could see that the ice layer was actually spreading outwards with the dancing lotus as the center. The closer it was to the dancing lotus, the thicker and smoother the ice layer was. Correspondingly, the further it was, the more fragmented the ice layer was. When it reached the dam where the two worlds met, there were only some small pieces of floating ice left. The so-called bridge made of ice didn't really connect the two sides. Because the distance in the middle was closer, the ice layer spread outwards and reached here first. At a glance, it did look like an ice bridge. Actually, there was still a short distance, near the dam, where the floating ice didn't condense. The water was sparkling calm and clear. Song Wuan walked forward carefully. Anyway, regardless of whether the ice bridge was completely connected, he wouldn't walk on it. In fact, he wouldn't even get close to her. He heard what Jiang Yuqing said just now clearly. Who knew how these floating pieces of ice appeared? There might be some danger hidden below. Just like that, he only controlled his sword and flew across the lake, approaching the dancing lotus in the middle bit by bit. Seeing Song Wuan go over, Jiang Yuqing looked at the remaining people. That dancing lotus is very strange. If we work together, the chances of success might be higher. The scene of Elder Qiushi being dragged under the ice layer was still vivid in his mind. Jiang Yuqing didn't dare to guarantee that Song Wuan could do much better than Elder Qiushi alone. Xiaorong nodded. That makes sense. There's strength in numbers. If we work together, we can take care of each other. Then he also tiptoed and walked forward. Jian Shai looked at Yuqi Song. The two of them exchanged glances and moved out together. Song Wuan heard their conversation clearly, and couldn't help but look back. Seeing that these people had indeed caught up to him, his hanging heart finally calmed down. No matter what, the more people there were, the more confidence they had. Jiang Yuqing was at the back and also followed. Originally, he didn't want to do this. After all, he had seen with his own eyes how terrifying Mirror Lake was. Moreover, his body had not fully recovered yet. There were a few wounds on his body, and for some reason, his recovery speed was much slower than before. If it was in the past, it would have been healed long ago. There was no need for him to worry about it at all. But now it kept going back and forth. Who knew if it was because of that tree root? However, since the seniors had already made their moves, he couldn't just stand by and watch. The few of them approached one after another. Finally, they formed a circle around the dancing lotus. It was noon, and the sun was hanging high in the sky. The bright sunlight shone on the surface of the ice, reflecting rays of dazzling light. However, they did not cover their eyes. Instead, they stared at the dancing lotus in front of them. The palm-sized flower had a total of 5 petals. Every petal was a translucent pinkish-white color, as if it was carved out of crystal jade. There was a thin layer of frost on the petals, making them look cold and noble to the extreme. So this is the dancing lotus. Song Wuan couldn't help but mutter softly. It was a top-notch medicinal herb that only existed in legends. It was rare to see it in 100 years. He licked his slightly cracked lips, and greed and desire flashed across his eyes. He kicked with the tip of his foot, flipped his sword, and instantly held it tightly in his hand. From the looks of it, he clearly planned to cut it directly with his sword. Jiang Yuqing said, "Hold on." Song Wuan was stunned. "What's the matter?" Jiang Yuqing looked at the sword in his hand and frowned. Back then, Elder Qiushi used a sword. They were standing outside at that time, and it was close to night, so they couldn't see clearly. However, he remembered clearly that Elder Qiushi was indeed dragged down after using a sword. It happened in the blink of an eye. Song Wuan's heart skipped a beat. He hurriedly kept his sword, and looked at the dancing lotus in shock. This thing is actually so strange. If using a sword doesn't work, how do we take it? We can't use our hands, right? Wouldn't that be more dangerous? Jiang Yuqing looked at Jianshai and Yuqi-song. What do the two of you think? Both of them were celestial physician. Logically speaking, they should be more knowledgeable about this. Yuqi-song looked at the dancing lotus and sighed softly. Actually, to take this dancing lotus, it's both simple and difficult. The dancing lotus only blooms once every 500 years. Each time it blooms for 5 years. If no one plucks it within these 5 years, it will become a seed again and go through another 500-year cycle. Therefore, it's most suitable to pluck it while it's still blooming. The medicinal effects are also the best. However, the dancing lotus is a rare treasure. Also, it's different from other treasures. It usually doesn't have high-level fiends guarding it. This causes its defense and attack to be extremely strong. If you want to pluck it safely, you need to use fresh blood as a guide. Jiang Yuqing frowned. Fresh blood as a guide? What do you mean? The smell of fresh blood will cause the dancing lotus to fall into a short slumber. As long as you smear blood on it, you can reduce its danger to the minimum. Song Wan interrupted. Then this doesn't seem difficult? Jianshai sneered. It's not difficult, but the cultivator must be at least a stage 8 warrior. Since you make it sound so easy, why don't you do it? Song Wan was very unhappy with this mocking tone. No matter what, he was still a peak stage 8 warrior. Could it be that he couldn't even take back such a small dancing lotus? What's so difficult about this? He clenched his teeth, raised his sword, and slashed his palm. Scarlet blood gushed out instantly and dyed his entire palm red. Then, he took a deep breath and stretched his hand forward. The dancing lotus swayed gently with the wind and didn't have any abnormalities. Song Wan calmed down and was about to grab the stem of the dancing lotus. Suddenly, the sound of something breaking through the air came from afar. Swoosh! The sound was sharp. The wind whistled. It went straight for Song Wan's glabella. Song Wan was shocked and immediately retreated while brandishing his sword. Clang! The sound of sharp weapons clashing suddenly came. Song Wan felt as if something had hit his sword harshly, and he instantly felt like he was bearing a heavy weight. His arm was directly numb from the shock. Song Wan took 2 steps back in a panic, before stabilizing himself with much difficulty. He looked up in shock and anger, only to see a palm-sized piece of ice that had just split neatly from the middle and fell onto the surface of the lake. He looked down and saw that there was a missing piece on the ice layer not far away. Everyone was shocked when they saw this scene. To be able to casually use such a piece of broken ice to easily block Song Wan's attack, and even gain the upper hand. The other party's ability was obvious. Song Wan's heart trembled slightly. After a while, the air in the distance suddenly rippled. A tall and slender black figure walked out from within. His voice was low and casual, like the wind brushing past the strings of a zither, but it also carried a superior and unparalleled arrogance. Sorry, that's my wife's flower. Digression. I won't be adding it today. Tomorrow at 12 a.m., please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 786. The person was wearing a black brocade shirt and didn't have any extra accessories. His long hair was draped over his shoulders, and he had a lazy and cold aura all over his body. He wore a silver mask that covered his face. Only a pair of eyes that were as deep as the starry night was like a whirlpool that had a fatal attraction. It was as if one would unconsciously sink into it if they looked at it any longer. Seeing the person, Song Wan and the others were secretly shocked. This man's aura was extremely obscure and powerful, and he was only stronger than them. Song Wan swallowed his saliva with difficulty. Who exactly are you? Who I am isn't important. That man's voice was casual as he chuckled softly. What's important is that you can't touch this flower. He's here for the dancing lotus. They looked at each other. Song Wan frowned and couldn't help but retort. Everything has a first-come, first-served rule. We came first, so this dancing lotus naturally belongs to us. Even if you're powerful, you can't be so unreasonable, right? His tone was already very restrained. If it were someone else, Song Wan would have chased after them long ago to teach them a lesson. However, this man in black's strength was unfathomable. They didn't dare to use force, and could only start to reason with him. That's strange. This dancing lotus is still growing in the lake. How did it become yours? Could it be that this first come, first serve rule is based on who sees this dancing lotus first? That man wasn't angry. Instead, he laughed as if he heard a joke. Song Wuan's face flushed red, and he was a little embarrassed. He also knew that what he said just now wasn't reasonable. They came to this mirror lake first, but in reality, they didn't successfully take the dancing lotus away. They didn't even touch it. It was indeed unreasonable to say that this dancing lotus was his. Song Wuan wanted to continue, but was silently stopped by Jiang Yuqing. Jiang Yuqing stepped forward, cupped his hands, and asked very politely, "I'm Jiang Yuqing." "I'm Jiang Yuqing. May I know who you are?" Almost everyone in the Tianling dynasty knew of Jiang Yuqing's name. His original identity, as the eldest young master of the Jiang mansion, was actually not worth mentioning. But because he was once the empress concubine's fiancé, he also rose with the tide, and his fame increased by a lot. Jiang Yuqing introduced himself. On one hand, he hoped to know the other party's identity. On the other hand, it was a subtle deterrent. If the other party knew what was good for them, they should back off. The black-clothed man raised his eyelids slightly as a glimmer of light flashed through the depths of his eyes. "You are not qualified to know who I am." He said these words very softly and indifferently, but they carried a majesty that no one dared to disobey. Jiang Yuqing was stunned. Then, he felt as if his face had been slapped twice. It was burning with pain. He had never heard anyone speak to him like that before. In comparison, the other party seemed to be high and mighty, while he was as lowly as an ant. His expression became somewhat unsightly, and his voice also became cold. "Aren't you being a little too arrogant? Even if the other party's strength was tyrannical, he couldn't be so condescending." This mirror lake was still the territory of the Tianling dynasty. Jiang Yuqing suppressed the anger in his heart, and kept searching in his mind. When did the Tianling dynasty have such a person? But after thinking for a while, he still couldn't find anything. Because this black-clothed man couldn't match up to any of the top experts in his impression. Could it be that the other party was some hidden figure? Or perhaps he wasn't from the Tianling dynasty at all. This dancing lotus grows in Mirror Lake. Those who have the strength can obtain it. If you want it, feel free to come and snatch it. Jiang Yuqing said angrily. They had 5 people on their side, but the other party only had 1. No matter how strong he was, it was wishful thinking to fight 1 against 5. The black-clothed man sighed softly. "My madam told me not to act rashly." Jiang Yuqing sneered in his heart. This person was most likely afraid, but he still said it in such a dignified manner. "If you have changed your mind, feel free to leave now. For the sake of this dancing lotus, we won't argue with you so much." If possible, Jiang Yuqing still hoped to get rid of the other party as soon as possible. He didn't want to get involved in any trouble. The black-clothed man laughed softly and said slowly, "I've already said before that the flower belongs to my madam. Don't you understand?" His voice gradually turned cold, and until the last syllable, it already carried a biting cold murderous intent. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand. It was a slender, white and well-defined hand. At first glance, it looked like it was carefully carved from white jade that was suffused with a cold light. Then his index finger gently pointed forward. Buzz! A black force flew out like a sharp arrow. The sound of breaking air was sharp. A powerful pressure suddenly descended. An indescribable sense of danger welled up in his heart. Jiang Yuqing suddenly opened his eyes wide, and his pupils shrank. At this moment, he seemed to have been enveloped by the murderous intent. He retreated without a second thought, wanting to use his fastest speed to escape. However, after trying, he realized that his body was already unable to move. He was actually completely controlled by the other party's pressure. No matter what, he still had the combat power of a stage 7 warrior. But in front of this man, he didn't even have the right to escape. At this moment, Jiang Yuqing finally understood that the other party's strength was much stronger than they had expected. In the blink of an eye, the black origin power had already arrived in front of him. Qi! That force suddenly passed through the middle of Jiang Yuqing's chest. Blood and flesh splattered in an instant. The clothes in front of his chest were rapidly dyed red. Jiang Yuqing only felt a chill in his chest. After a short pause, intense pain engulfed him. The black-clothed man seemed a little regretful. Unfortunately, this is as far as you can go. He wanted to directly kill Jiang Yuqing. But his madam hadn't done anything yet. So he naturally had to keep him alive. Eldest young master. Seeing this situation, Song Wan and Xiaorong were shocked and hurriedly ran over. Eldest young master, are you okay? Everything happened too quickly just now. When that man attacked, they didn't even have time to react. By the time they realized what happened, Jiang Yuqing was already injured. Jiang Yuqing clutched his chest and warm blood flowed out. He hurriedly took out an elixir and swallowed it. For some reason, there was a faint burning pain in his lower abdomen. But at this moment, his chest was pierced through, and there was a bloody hole dripping with blood. He couldn't care so much. You. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something. But when he saw the black-clothed man, he couldn't say anything. That pair of eyes, indifferent, cold, and noble. A deep fear rose from the bottom of his heart. Suddenly, a white light flashed across Jiang Yuqing's mind, and he looked at the other party with a horrified expression. You are the Baichao buildings. You are the Baichao buildings. Chapter 787. His strength was unfathomable, his identity was mysterious, and he kept mentioning Madam. Wasn't this completely in line with the person behind 100 Herbs building that they had investigated previously? On the surface, 100 Herbs building was managed by Yu Ling, the manager, but anyone with a bit of insight could tell that 100 Herbs building had a true master. However, no one in Xiling City had ever seen this person. Even Jiang Yuqing was no exception. He had wanted to meet this mysterious person more than once, but he never had the chance. He didn't expect to meet him here. The man in black didn't seem to care about his words at all, and his fingers moved slightly. A breeze blew past, and the dancing lotus swayed gracefully. A layer of transparent barrier suddenly enveloped him. Xiaorong wanted to approach, but he was suffocated by the powerful aura that spread out from above. They looked at each other. Now, it was even more difficult to take the dancing lotus away. Song Wan asked worriedly and nervously, "Eldest young master, what should we do now?" Jiang Yuqing was seriously injured, and his situation didn't look good. The remaining few of them might not be that man in black's match. Even if they worked together, it would be very difficult to take back the dancing lotus. Jiang Yuqing gritted his teeth, and his lips and teeth were filled with the thick smell of blood. His chest and abdomen were surging, and his vision was turning black. His body hadn't completely recovered, and now that he was injured again, it was even more serious. For safety's sake, they should leave as soon as possible and not face this man directly. But that dancing lotus, he took a deep breath and said, "I'm fine. The dancing lotus is extremely important to Her Majesty. Please work together and take it back." Jiang Yuqing's words shocked the few of them. "Eldest young master, have you thought it through? The dancing lotus is important, but you can't ignore your body," Song Wan said anxiously. He glanced at the man in black from the corner of his eye, and his heart tightened. His arm was still numb and throbbing with pain. He was certain that he was definitely not the other party's match. This man was definitely the strongest he had seen in his life. If he continued to be so forceful, perhaps all of them would suffer in the end. Jiang Yuqing naturally didn't want to give up his life, but the dancing lotus was too important. He had to find a way to wake His Majesty up. If he missed this dancing lotus, who knew how long he would have to wait for the next opportunity? He shook his head. His Majesty's health is more important. Please. At this moment, the ice on the lake began to spread faster. The man in black lowered his eyes to take a look. His eyes moved slightly as he chuckled. "Looks like it's almost time." He didn't want these people to see what happened next. Thinking of this, he raised his head and looked at them. Then with a slight movement of his palm, a black ball flew out from his palm. That round ball grew in the wind. In the blink of an eye, it spread into a huge net. "Retreat." Jian Shai made a prompt decision and retreated without hesitation. But even though they were fast, that thing was even faster. With a swoosh, They were all enveloped by the huge black net. The black net once again condensed into a sphere and rapidly retreated. Their line of sight was instantly blocked, and they fell into darkness. After an unknown period of time, the darkness in front of him finally dispersed. The restraining force around them suddenly disappeared. They were finally able to look around, and discovered that they had already been expelled from Dahuang Swamp. Jianshai sucked in a breath of cold air. Who exactly is that person? How can he have such means? One had to know that they had to transfer through 2 transportation arrays to enter Dahuang Swamp. But that man in black actually chased them here so easily. Jianshai knew that he couldn't do it. In fact, almost no one in the entire Tianling dynasty could do it. Yuqi-song suddenly said. Although that person chased us out, he didn't kill us. Although Song Luan and Jiang Yuqing were injured, he didn't take their lives in the end. Song Luan was still alright. As for Jiang Yuqing, perhaps because he spoke a little impolitely earlier, the other party also hit him a little harder. But in the end, he still spared Jiang Yuqing's life. Otherwise, with his ability, it would be easy to kill Jiang Yuqing. Xiahou Rong sighed deeply. Fortunately, Jiang Yuqing's face was pale, but his eyes were very gloomy. Fortunately, what was there to be thankful for? Could it be that he had to kneel down and thank the other party for not killing him after that man in black severely injured him? He had lived for more than 20 years and had never suffered such humiliation. In other people's eyes, the other party might have let them go because he gave them a way out. But in Jiang Yuqing's eyes, that wasn't the case. This only made him feel aggrieved, angry, resentful. He was proud by nature and was unwilling to fall behind others in any aspect. Now that he was crushed by the other party without any suspense, how could he feel comfortable? That man in black actually didn't care about them at all. Thinking of this, anger attacked his heart, and he spat out another mouthful of blood as usual. Song Luan hesitated and asked, Then what do we do now? Eldest young master, your body can't be delayed. At the mention of this, Jiang Yuqing was even more annoyed. It was fine that they returned without any results the last time, but this was already the second time. Moreover, they specially invited these powerful people to come together, but they still ended up with nothing. What about Her Majesty? It was getting closer and closer to his wedding with Shangguan Wan. If Her Majesty didn't wake up. Just now, you said that person was from 100 Herbs Building? Yuqi-song suddenly asked. After sending those people out, the man in black walked forward and finally stood in front of the dancing lotus. He looked down and his originally cold and indifferent eyes seemed to have a layer of frost melted as slight ripples appeared. I haven't been here for a while, and you've been pestered by that thing? His voice was low and seemed to have a trace of a lazy smile. As he spoke, he waved his sleeves lightly. The ice surface suddenly cracked. The dancing lotus swayed gently. On the stem, rays of light reflected. Looking carefully, it turned out to be a silk thread thinner than a hair wrapped around its stem. The man in black hooked his finger slightly. The thread broke apart, flew up, and landed in his palm, becoming a messy ball. Looking at it like this, it could be barely seen that this thing was slightly green. A cluster of golden flames suddenly ignited in his palm. That ball was instantly burned to ashes. He said lazily, It's fine to bully my wife, but you actually dare to cheat. You're too shameless. The ice layer on the lake began to gradually shatter. Some of the floating ice also slowly melted. On the mirror lake, the waves were sparkling, and it was a quiet and peaceful scene. Suddenly, a roar broke the silence here. Roar. This sound almost shook the mountain forest and spread far and wide between heaven and earth. The man in black looked up. Well, it seems that a certain person's recent training results are very gratifying. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 788. With a thought, his tall and slender figure instantly disappeared from where he stood. The sun shone brightly and shone down. The mirror lake, which gradually regained its calm, reflected the blue sky, which was very moving. The frost on the dancing lotus had unknowingly dissipated, and the translucent pink and white petals were sparkling as they moved with the wind. Not only did this roar reach the mirror lake, But the few people in the mystic forest also heard it clearly. The few people who were originally waiting all turned around with different expressions. Mu Hongyu couldn't help but ask, "What was that roar? That roar just now, what kind of magical beast was it? It must be a high-level fiend to be able to cause such a commotion, right?" Lei Laosi chuckled and looked over with an excited expression. "High-level fiend? I'm afraid it's more than that." Yi Ranran exclaimed and realized that he had lost his composure. So he hurriedly covered his mouth. Could it be another legendary fiend? Lei Laosi looked at Qin Yi. "Big brother, what do you think?" Qin Yi narrowed his eyes and replied after a while. "It's indeed a legendary fiend. However, it sounds like it came from the Red Moon Desert. The mystic forest was basically under his control. If any legendary fiend appeared here, he would definitely notice it immediately. This roar came so suddenly, so it must have come from the Red Moon Desert. However, what surprised him was that even if it was a legendary fiend, it was still shocking that its roar could travel so far from the Red Moon Desert. This legendary fiend's abilities shouldn't be underestimated. Red Moon Desert? That far? The few of them were shocked. Mu Hongyu tilted her head, and a trace of curiosity appeared on her face. Speaking of which, there are quite a lot of rumors about the Mystic Forest and Mirror Lake in Dahuang Swamp. But only the Red Moon Desert seems to be very mysterious. When we came, we only took a quick look. It was an endless golden desert with rolling heat waves. Magnificent, majestic. Before she came, she even did some research on Dahuang Swamp and realized that the description of the Red Moon Desert was the least. After looking at it for a long time, she still couldn't figure it out. Qin Yi restrained his expression and said seriously, "You can't go there. None of you are allowed to casually approach the Red Moon Desert. If you hear anything, pretend that you didn't hear anything. Do you understand?" Mu Hongyu originally said it casually, but she didn't expect Qin Yi to instruct or warn her so seriously. She quickly straightened her back. "Got it. Red Moon Desert." It was the time of the day when the sun was at its brightest. The golden desert was boundless. The ground was boiling hot, and heat waves were rolling. This place was like a huge steamer, stuffy and hot. There seemed to be flames burning under the ground. On the undulating sand dunes, a white figure was standing. It was Xue. In fact, it had already turned into an earthy yellow color, and its entire body was dirty. Compared to before, it had lost a lot of weight. However, the aura on its body was much stronger than before. It didn't stop to rest as it continued to run through the vast desert. Finally, it reached the standard and was able to rest for a while. Xue could not help but let out a long howl. She looked at the sand dunes in the desert with tears in her eyes. "It's alive!" A tall and straight black figure gradually appeared in front of it. Xue's tears hung at the corners of its eyes, but they could not fall. It was very awkward. As I placed all my attention on training, I didn't notice that my master actually came. A baby-like voice slowly sounded. "You still dare to come?" That man took off his mask and revealed a noble and devilish face. It was Rongxiu. Digression. 6 o'clock mobile users. Please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 789. Rongxiu chuckled, as if he did not hear the dissatisfaction and murderous intent in his words. He nodded slightly. "Greetings to the three seniors. It has been a long time since we last met. You seem to be more energetic than before." Whoosh! A cloud of yellow sand suddenly swept up from the ground. It transformed into a long sword and pierced towards Rongxiu. The scorching hot air was instantly torn apart by a black hole. A biting cold attacked. It went straight for Rongxiu's glabella. Rongxiu looked up slightly with a calm expression. His deep phoenix eyes were as pure and unfathomable as the starry night. His cold and undisciplined eyes finally flashed with a trace of seriousness. He held a long silver sword in his hand. Immediately, the sword rose. The sword fell. Whoosh! This sword movement was extremely simple. There were no fancy moves. It only gathered a terrifying force and fell straight down. The sword light flew out. It broke through the air. Two streaks of sword energy met the attack head-on. The hot golden sand was like a hurricane that swept past, and the yellow sand flew everywhere. Two deep grooves appeared on the sand. Clang! A crisp sound of collision was heard. The two streaks of sword energy transformed into countless streaks of light. A violent aura erupted from the middle and swept wildly in all directions. Seeing this, Shue Shue immediately buried its head in its paws. It had been here for so many days. It did not learn anything else, but it had trained its instinct to avoid the wind and sand. Although it was already covered in dust, its master was here after all. If it could save it, it would do its best to save it. Shue Shue's fur danced wildly in the wind. Fortunately, its body had become much stronger recently, and it was still very stable in the wind. After a while, the waves gradually calmed down. Shue Shue crawled out from a pile of sand. Its body shook violently as it looked at its master. Rongxiu was still standing in the same spot. His feet sank half an inch into the sand. He tidied his clothes. Actually, he was still as clean as new. Not a single grain of sand was on him. It could be seen that he had dealt with this move with ease. Rongxiu cupped his fists and smiled faintly. "Thank you for your guidance, senior." After a while, the baby-like voice sounded again. "I haven't seen you for a few years, and you've already cultivated to such a level. No wonder you're so arrogant. Senior, you're mistaken. In front of you, I don't dare to offend you at all. How is this arrogant?" Rongxiu raised his eyebrows slightly, but his tone was very sincere. Dugamabao snorted. Lan Xiao couldn't help but interject. "Actually, it doesn't matter if you're insolent or not, but your face hasn't changed much. It's still as annoying as before." His voice sounded sour. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but say, "Lan Xiao, can you have even one chance to see someone for the first time? Isn't that about their face?" Lan. Diwu Zhangzi thought to himself that he really had a problem. He actually hoped that Lan Xiao could correct this problem. "Senior, you flatter me." Lan Xiao was speechless. He was a little sad. Damn it. There's actually a man who's more shameless and narcissistic than me in this world. He boasted that he had reached the peak in this aspect. But every time he met Rongxiu, he was always one step behind. He would always return empty-handed and be angered half to death. Dugamabao couldn't help but say coldly, "Damn pervert. Can't you stop for a while at your age? Is this the main point?" "The main point is the girl." Lan Xiao was furious. "Who are you calling old?" "That's right, Big Bao. You still have to grow for a few hundred years before you can reach my waist." "Ah." Lan Zhao's voice stopped abruptly after a short and sharp cry. Rongxiu looked at the void in front of him and said, "It's been a few years. Seniors, you're not even willing to come out and meet me?" Dugamabao snorted coldly. "If the girl is here, we'll naturally come out to meet you. But you're the only one here now. Why do we have to go out?" Rongxiu's expression changed slightly. He rubbed his brows helplessly and found it funny. "It's still the same as before. Rongxiu, you're a smart person. You should know why we're looking for you this time." Dugamabao's voice sounded much more serious with a hint of coldness. "What's the matter with you, The moment he said that, the surrounding space seemed to have frozen. Shue Shue froze and didn't dare to move. The surroundings were clearly hot, but at this moment, it felt bone-piercing cold. It was as if a wave of coldness was spreading from all directions. It looked at its master worriedly. Rongxiu's expression became much calmer. He didn't speak for a long time. Until Dugamabao and the rest thought that Rongxiu wasn't going to say anything, he finally spoke. "Originally, you and I had promised to visit you again, but a lot of things happened in the past few years, so we haven't been able to come. Please forgive us, seniors." Rongxiu's tone was very calm, as if he was talking about something unrelated. But if one listened carefully, they would realize that under the seemingly calm sea, there were endless waves surging, as if this peace would be broken at any time. After a moment of silence, Lan Xiao couldn't help but ask, "And then, what the hell is going on?" This Rongxiu was really too much. How could he only say half of what he wanted to say? Rongxiu paused. "Please forgive me for not being able to tell you what exactly happened now. When you see her in the future, it'll be more appropriate for you to ask her." "Why you're not going to say it clearly?" Lan Xiao was a little surprised. Diwu Zhangzi couldn't help but say, "There's no difference whether you or you say it. Can't you just say it now?" The two of them were very close. Wasn't it the same no matter who said it? Rongxiu shook his head. Although he was tactful, he was very determined. It's indeed better for her to say some things. There were too many things involved. It might not be a good thing to let them all know now. Besides, there were a lot of things that even she didn't know about. Seeing how determined Rongxiu was, the few of them knew that they wouldn't be able to get anything out of him. Lan Xiao snorted. If you don't want to say it, then don't say it. Anyway, we'll be able to see her soon. When the time came, he would definitely ask everything clearly. Big Bao, don't help him tame his beasts anymore. Let little Snow go back with him. We'll wait here for her to come out. Xue Xue, who had been forgotten, was filled with tears again. Can I finally escape from this sea of suffering? Rongxiu said seriously. Thank you seniors for taking care of Xue Xue. However, I'll continue to stay here for a period of time. So it'll be good for Xue Xue to accompany you here. Is that okay? Xue Xue looked at its master in disbelief, as if it couldn't believe that he actually dared to sell it in front of them. Dugamabao said, It's fine if it stays. It's also fine if you don't want to say it. However, I have one last question. Were you the one who changed Yuer's body? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Chapter 790. Chu Luiyue, who was trapped underground, was completely unaware of the changes in the outside world. She didn't even notice Rongxiu's arrival. In the dark space, Chu Luiyue and the two Tian baby had already exchanged a few blows and were now in a stalemate. The thick and heavy space was the two Tian baby's divine domain, and it could basically control everything in here. As for Chu Luiyue, every move she made here was extremely laborious. When she used the same move, the origin power she consumed here was at least 2 or 3 times more than what she normally consumed outside. If it was someone else, they might not be able to hold on. But Chu Luiyue was different. She had too much origin power stored in her body. And now that she had broken through to the middle of the 5th rank, her control over origin power was much stronger than before. Naturally, she could use it more freely. She held the long yuan sword tightly with both hands, looked at the two Tian baby opposite her, and muttered in a low voice. It seems that something happened outside. In this duel, she was actually at a disadvantage. But just now, for some unknown reason, the two Tian baby had undergone a slight change. The thin layer of frost that surrounded it had actually gradually disappeared. Following that, its strength had clearly weakened. Chu Luiyue had been with it for so long, and was very familiar with everything about it. Naturally, she was also very sensitive to its changes. The two Tian babies surrounding crystals had almost been completely devoured by her, so its remaining strength was actually not enough for it. It intermittently seized some energy from outside to fill its body, and used it to strengthen its own strength. It was also because of this that Chu Luiyue had been unable to completely take it down. It had an endless supply of energy supporting it, and it was extremely difficult to deal with it. Now that the layer of frost had dissipated, it didn't show any more signs of such a situation. This made Chu Luiyue suspect that something had happened outside. But no matter what, this was good for her. She raised her sword again and pointed it at the two Tian baby. Now, are you still not willing to obediently admit defeat? A vigorous aura suddenly erupted from the two Tian baby. Chu Luiyue sent out her sword. Long Yuan sword. The sharp and cold sword light flickered, and on the sword blade, 2 types of flames intersected. It emitted a terrifying pressure. This place had been completely sealed, so Chu Luiyue wasn't worried that someone would suddenly break in. Thus, she used her trump card the moment she attacked. The sound of the sword. The flames burned fiercely. Like 2 huge illusions, they surrounded the two Tian baby. The space around the Tian baby began collapsing again. Following that, the surrounding flames were also swallowed. Annihilation in the space's space. But she still, the flames the Tian baby, thus the two Tian baby. Was as these two flames, one was formed by the water droplets force, while the other was taken from the heavenly square cauldron. If someone was here at this moment, and saw that the two Tian baby was being forced into such a state by a stage 5 warrior like Chu Luiyue, their jaws would definitely drop. Seeing that the situation wasn't good, the two Tian baby moved and suddenly dodged upwards. However, the two flames followed closely behind and soon surrounded the heaven-wrecking holy seed. The long yuan sword chi finally arrived. Then it fiercely fell. Bang! The two balls of energy collided. Rumble! Crazy aftershocks swept out in all directions. Violent sounds rang out continuously. A crack suddenly appeared on the ground. Chu Liyue's pupil shrank. Then, she saw that the faint layer of light outside also began to sway. The space of the divine realm began to compress toward Chu Liyue. Chu Liyue's body began to ache as if there was a heavy object pressing down on her. And the force in her force slowed down again. Chu Liyue's gaze was fixed on the two Tian baby in front of her. But she realized that the two balls of flames seemed to be greatly affected, and the flames became much smaller. She was shocked. Could this be the two Tian baby's true power? Just as this thought flashed through her mind, the two Tian babies suddenly glowed. Taizu suddenly shouted in a deep voice, "Lu Yu, retreat!" Upon hearing this, Chu Liyue immediately went on her toes and rapidly moved backward without thinking. At the same time, she raised the black shield in front of her. Boom! Boom! The continuous and ferocious attacks caused Chu Liyue's hand, which was holding onto the black shield, to crack. Although the black shield blocked most of the impact, a small part of the force was transmitted to Chu Liyue's body through the black shield. In an instant, the blood in her chest and abdomen surged, and her lips turned pale. The heaven-wrecking holy seed was indeed much stronger than he had expected. Chu Liyue pursed her lips and quickly glanced at the two Tian baby, only to see that the light on it was even brighter. This power was clearly stored in its own body. In the next moment, the two Tian baby flew toward Chu Liyue. It was as if there was a layer of invisible barrier around it, blocking all the sword energy and flames outside. Wherever it passed, it left behind a black spatial crack. Chu Liyue felt a chill run down her spine, and her mind was constantly thinking of ways to deal with it. Soon, the heaven-wrecking holy seed arrived not far from her. For some reason, Chu Liyue felt a trace of ridicule and anger. In the next moment, a cold wind suddenly attacked her from behind. Chu Liyue was startled. She looked back. The same heaven-wrecking holy seed had appeared behind her at some point in time. It was flying straight toward Chu Liyue's dantian. It seemed that it was going to take the power in her body. Crack! A crack suddenly appeared on the pure gold armor. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from the Love Network. Chapter 791. This two Tian baby is a twin. The Taizu was shocked and angry at the same time. Chu Liyue's heart skipped a beat. Twin? Didn't that mean that there were indeed two Tian babies here? She immediately turned her head to take a look, and found that the two Tian baby that she had been fighting with earlier was still floating in the air. This was not an illusion. There were indeed two Tian babies, one in front of the other behind. Chu Liyue was stunned. Even though she had made all the preparations to deal with this two Tian baby, she did not expect that there were actually two twins. Dealing with one was already difficult enough, let alone two? While Chu Liyue was in a daze, the two identical two Tian babies flew towards her. Chu Liyue felt as if her internal organs were being squeezed together by something, as if they would explode from her chest in the next moment. She gritted her teeth as countless thoughts flashed through her mind. She had to dodge. Once she was hit by this two Tian baby, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, the black shield could only block one of them. What about the other one? The pure gold armor had already cracked. She was no match for it at all. Screech! A clear chime could be heard all of a sudden. Chu Liyue only saw a red shadow flash before her eyes. Dumpling was already in front of her. Dumpling! Chu Liyue exclaimed. Even the pure gold armor could not block the power of the two Tian baby, let alone Dumpling's body of flesh and blood. Even a divine beast would not be able to block it. Dumpling flapped its wings. The crimson flames swept out in a frenzy, quickly condensing into a huge barrier in front of it. The two Tian baby quickly flew over. Clang! Almost effortlessly, it pierced through that layer of barrier. Bang! The sound of the barrier shattering could be heard. Chu Luiyue was blocked behind Dumpling. Her line of sight was completely blocked, and she could not see anything. However, she had heard that sound clearly. Tuan. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat at this moment. She hurriedly called for Dumpling. As long as Dumpling returned to her body, she could avoid this attack. However, Dumpling did not move. It was still firmly and stubbornly standing in front of her. Although they were in a contractual relationship, it was reasonable to say that all of Dumpling's actions had to be approved by Chu Luiyue. If Chu Luiyue summoned it, it would not be able to resist. However, because Tuanzi was now a divine beast, it had a certain degree of autonomy to a large extent. It was also because of this that it could continue blocking in front of Chu Luiyue. Of course, it was also because all of this happened too quickly that no one could react in time. Chi-chi. The sound of something piercing through flesh could be heard. It was dull and short. Chu Luiyue's heart sank. She immediately looked up and saw that on Dumpling's left wing, there was a bloody hole the size of a fist. The two-Tian baby was actually very small. It was only the size of an adult's knuckle. It had two sharp ends and a slight bulge in the middle, like a small shuttle. It was reasonable to say that the wound left by this thing would not be very big. However, in reality, because of the overbearing aura around it, when it pierced through something, the hole would often expand due to the terrifying power. At this moment, Dumpling was in such a state. In an instant, flesh and blood splattered everywhere. A few drops of warm blood splashed onto Chu Luiyue's face. Before she could react, she saw the two-Tian baby flying towards her. Chu Luiyue's eyes turned scarlet. Were you the one who switched her body? Hearing this, Rong Xiu's eyebrows twitched slightly. The surroundings were incomparably quiet. They could even hear the sound of sand flowing slowly. The sun was blazing hot, but there was no wind at all. The surrounding air seemed to have become sticky and hot, as if it was difficult to breathe. Actually, Rong Xiu had only paused for a short while, but to these people, it felt like an incomparably long period of time had passed. Rong Xiu's thin lips parted slightly. Just as he was about to say something, his expression suddenly changed. He suddenly turned around and looked in the direction of the mystic forest. Her pure gold sacred armor was broken. He quickly said, "Seniors, something has happened in the mystic forest. I have to rush over immediately. Excuse me." After saying that, he lifted his feet and was about to rush forward. Wait! A cloud of yellow sand suddenly flew up and formed a fence in front of him, blocking his path. What happened over there? Tell me clearly. This was the voice of the Dugumabao. The three of them could only come out on the night of the crimson moon every month. The rest of the time, they could only stay in this desert. However, they could more or less sense everything that happened in the entire Dahuang swamp. Everything was fine now. Why did Rong Xiu suddenly want to leave? Rong Xiu put on the silver mask and said concisely, "Her pure gold sacred armor is broken." What? Duga Mabao was stunned for a moment and immediately denied it. That's impossible. Although that thing is quite powerful, it's impossible to break the pure gold sacred armor. They had specially studied that thing in the past. After confirming that it hadn't matured yet, they were relieved to let the girl deal with it alone. Rong Xiu's voice seemed to be covered in a layer of frost. I specially left a mark on the pure gold sacred armor. It's definitely not wrong. Hearing how certain Rong Xiu's tone was, the few of them also felt a little uneasy. Diwu Zhengzi hurriedly said, "Then go quickly. You must protect her." Rong Xiu nodded lightly and instantly disappeared. "Little snowflake, why aren't you following?" Lan Xiao added. Xue Xue was originally worried about Chu Luiyue. Hearing this, it was as if it had been granted amnesty. It raised its claws and instantly transformed into a bolt of lightning and rushed out. After the man and beast left, Lan Xiao couldn't help but say, "Seriously, if it weren't for the fact that we can't leave this godforsaken place, how could we not even be able to do such a small thing? This is great. We gave that kid another chance to be a hero and save the beauty. The most important thing is that the girl is fine. Who cares who saved her?" Diwu Zhengzi snorted and had a rare temper. "I'm just saying. But Big Bao, weren't you sure that that thing was fine? What's going on now?" Lan Xiao asked unhappily. Dugu Mabao fell silent and didn't speak for a long time. Lan Xiao snorted coldly. If it's really because there's something wrong with that thing that made the girl hurt, without him and Diwu Zhangzi having to do anything, Big Bao would suffer to death. Let's see how you explain it to the girl later. After a long while, Dugu Mabao said slowly and firmly, "She'll be fine." Dong! The crisp and melodious sound of the collision echoed in the dark and cramped space. Chu Luiyue stared in shock at the transparent square cauldron that suddenly appeared. It took her a while to react. Just now she was about to risk her life. In the end, her vision blurred, and this heavenly square cauldron appeared on its own and blocked her. Most importantly, he had really blocked the heaven-wrecking holy seed. That sound was produced by the collision between the two. The two Tian baby actually bounced back after being hit by the counterattack. Chu Luiyue was dumbfounded. "Luyu, your treasure is actually so powerful." Taizu's voice couldn't hide his excitement. Chu Luiyue heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. "I didn't think." Her voice stopped abruptly. A sparkling and translucent white bone slowly floated out of the heavenly square cauldron. This collision had actually caused the great phoenix dragon's skeleton to be knocked out. Digression. After supper, everyone went to sleep. Tomorrow at midnight, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 792. Previously, Chu Luiyue had carefully kept this skeleton in the heavenly square cauldron, because she was worried that the great phoenix dragon race would discover its aura and chase after it. She didn't expect that the two Tian babies' collision would directly shake the skeleton out. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly trembled, and she immediately put the skeleton back. Bang! The skeleton had just floated out of the cauldron when it was suppressed by Chu Luiyue. There was a collision echo from inside. Chu Luiyue was still in shock, and her eyes were fixed on the heavenly square cauldron. This time, the skeleton didn't come out again. But thinking of what had just happened, Chu Luiyue still felt a little uneasy. In that instant, that piece of bone was completely exposed. Would the great phoenix dragon race sense it? Yes. The legendary three-eyed eagle's indifferent voice sounded in her heart. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Really? The great phoenix dragon bloodline is one of the two strongest races in the world. They are extremely sensitive to their own race. Even if they are thousands of miles away, they can still sense evil intentions without any hindrance. The legendary three-eyed eagle's tone was much more serious. Previously, with the long yuan sword and the heavenly square cauldron suppressing it, this thing's aura didn't spread. But just now, Chu Luiyue's heart slowly sank. Originally, she still had a trace of hope, but the current situation was probably dangerous. Then what can we do? Chu Luiyue asked with a headache. She knew that she was no match for existences like the great phoenix dragon. The legendary three-eyed eagle fell silent. Taizu suddenly said, "Actually, it's not that there's no way. If the great phoenix dragon race comes, they will definitely ask for the skeleton back. Luyu, why don't you use the skeleton on the legendary three-eyed eagle as soon as possible? This way, they won't be able to compete with you." Chu Luiyue was stunned. Did Taizu mean that she should help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body now? This is indeed a solution, but Taizu still lacks the herbs needed to reconstruct its body. Taizu coughed. "I remember that you already have the purple gold Bodhi leaf, right? This was enough. There should be some among the remaining long yuan swords." What? For a moment, Chu Luiyue thought that he was hallucinating. What do you think is inside the long yuan sword? Taizu paused for a moment, his voice drifting. "It's those herbs that can help divine beasts reconstruct their bodies. I remember that there are still some left. However, it's mainly because you already have the purple gold Bodhi leaf. That's the most important thing." The hilt of the long yuan sword was a huge space. There were many treasures and riches that the Taizu had brought out from the Tianling God realm. Because there were too many of them, even Chu Luiyue didn't fully understand what was inside. Now that she heard from Taizu, she realized that there were even such things. Blood cloud divine crystal? Yes. Ink essence bamboo? Yes. Heavenly spirit true fruit? I think so too. The corners of Chu Luiyue's eyes twitched violently. Taizu felt guilty and hurriedly explained. Actually, this matter is complicated. I intentionally found these things back then. Although I used some of them, there's still a lot left. Anyway, it's definitely enough for you to use. I didn't think of this matter at first. After all, there are too many things. Ahem. I didn't tell you at first, because I wanted to give you more opportunities to train. Taizu meant what he said. At first, he really didn't think of the existence of these things. It was only when he saw Chu Luiyue retrieve the purple gold Bodhi leaf that he finally remembered. But at that time, Chu Luiyue and the legendary three-eyed eagle weren't very anxious about this matter, so he didn't mention it. He wanted to let her find it first and gain more experience. In the end, if she really didn't find anything, he would take it out. He didn't expect to encounter today's situation. Luyu, are you angry with me? Taizu asked nervously. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Taizu, why would I be angry with you? I can't thank you enough for helping me like this. It was just that this matter came too suddenly. She didn't expect it for a moment, so she was so shocked. Speaking of which, these things were Taizu's after all, and he had no obligation to give them to her. Now that her urgent need could be solved, she was indeed full of joy. However, judging from Taizu's words, he used to have a lot of these things. Even if he needed them for himself, he didn't need to leave so many behind. A trace of doubt flashed through Chu Luiyue's mind. But the situation was urgent at this time, so she couldn't ask in detail. She could only suppress the confusion in her heart. Bang! Another crashing sound was heard. Chu Luiyue immediately looked back. This time, it was the other one that struck the black shield. What made Chu Luiyue feel lucky was that this collision didn't leave any marks on the black shield. It was much better than the broken pure gold armor. Chu Luiyue's eyes narrowed slightly. This black shield was indeed of a higher level than the pure gold armor, and its defense was stronger. Her heart calmed down a little, and she looked at the other one. She could completely leave her back to the black shield. Now, she just needed to deal with this one. Her gaze fell on the heavenly square cauldron. With a thought, the transparent square cauldron slowly rotated and flew forward. The two Tian babies seemed to feel a threat and began to retreat. Chu Luiyue was delighted. The heavenly square cauldron seemed to be able to deal with this thing. The two Tian babies suddenly rushed forward. Chu Luiyue looked up. Then she saw the other two Tian baby flying over. The two heaven-wrecking holy seeds were about to collide. Luyu stopped them. Once the two twins merge, it will be even more difficult to deal with. Taizu shouted in a deep voice. Chu Luiyue directly swung the long yuan sword. A biting cold sword light flashed. It flew between the two Tian babies. At the same time, the heavenly square cauldron slowly flew toward one of them. A transparent tongue of flame shot out from it. In just an instant, one of the two Tian babies was swept away by the transparent flame, and then disappeared into the heavenly square cauldron. From the beginning to the end, everything was smooth and natural without the slightest pause. It was as if the two Tian baby was just an ordinary toy. Even Chu Luiyue was secretly shocked. She thought that the heavenly square cauldron should be able to deal with the two Tian baby, but she didn't expect it to be so easy. In the next second, the second heavenly square cauldron was swallowed by the second flame. From beginning to end, only a few breaths of time had passed. The heavenly square cauldron quickly shrank and fell back into Chu Luiyue's hands. Chu Luiyue carefully looked at the small transparent square cauldron in her palm. Looking at it, she could vaguely see the skeleton of the great phoenix dragon and the two Tian babies inside. However, the two babies were separated, each occupying one side. Chu Luiyue blinked and couldn't believe that the two Tian baby was subdued so easily. Taizu suddenly asked, "What's the origin of the two Tian baby? What is the origin of this square cauldron of yours?" A better reading experience came from the Love Network. Chapter 793. Chu Luiyue shook her head. "I got it when I met the legendary three-eyed eagle, but I don't know what it is." She had asked the legendary three-eyed eagle before, but it didn't seem to be willing to say much. It only said that it was a sacred object. It was such a vague answer that it was as good as not saying anything. Chu Luiyue knew that she wouldn't be able to get anything out of it for the time being, so she put this matter aside for the time being. As time passed, she also realized that this thing seemed to be more mysterious than she had guessed. Whether it was the great phoenix dragon's skeleton or the two Tian babies, it could easily swallow them and completely suppress their power. It was terrifying. Taizu couldn't help but say, "It's not an exaggeration to say that your luck is heaven-defying." First it was the black pyramid, then the water droplet, and finally this transparent square cauldron. Even the black shield was somewhat unfathomable. Even the dragon abyss sword paled in comparison to these treasures. Any one of these things would probably cause countless people to go crazy over it. And Chu Liyue actually had so many. There was no lack of geniuses in this world. But there were very few who could grow from geniuses to true experts. To become one of these people, talent and hard work were indispensable. But there was also one thing that was extremely important: luck. And Chu Liyue had all of them. Others might not be able to encounter such a great opportunity, even once in their lifetime. But she kept encountering it one after another. If someone like her couldn't become a top expert, it would be too unreasonable. Chu Liyue's lips curled up. Actually, I didn't expect this thing to be so powerful. However, this matter was finally resolved. The stone hanging in her heart finally fell to the ground. She let out a long breath and looked around. The space was cracking bit by bit. Cracks began to appear on the layer of faint green light. She had already put away the two Tian baby, so the divine territory it displayed naturally dissipated along with it. Soon, it turned into streams of light and disappeared, dimming bit by bit. The pressure on Chu Liyue's body also gradually lessened. She looked at the heavenly square cauldron again with a solemn expression. She couldn't go out yet. The matter of the great phoenix dragon skeleton had not been resolved yet. Since he had everything, he might as well help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body. With this thought in mind, Chu Liyue said, "Taizu, may I trouble you to help me set up the barrier first?" The great ancestor knew what she was planning to do, and immediately attacked without saying a word. A translucent barrier quickly appeared. Silver lightning could be vaguely seen swimming on it. Taizu had used a lot of Tianlei in the past, so he had fused a part of Tianlei's power into his own power. After isolating this space, Chu Liyue felt slightly more at ease. She threw the heavenly square cauldron out, and it quickly returned to its normal size and landed on the ground silently. Dumpling. She summoned Dumpling back first. Tuanzi turned into a small one and went back to her shoulder, leaning on her shoulder with grievance and pitifulness. One of its wings drooped and was dripping with blood. The wound was a shocking sight. When Dumpling was still in the form of a blood ferret, it had always been very sturdy. Although it had been injured before, it rarely looked like this. Now that it had just become a divine beast, it had suffered such a serious injury. Chu Liyue's heart ached when she saw it. She carefully cleaned its wound, took out medicine and bandaged it. Then she pretended to be angry. "Have you learned your lesson? Let's see if you dare to be so disobedient next time." Tuanzi whimpered and looked at her pitifully with a pair of magnificent eyes. It was so dangerous at that time. How could it avoid it? Even if there was only a 1 in 10,000 chance that she would be injured, it would still block in front of her without hesitation. After waiting for so long, they finally met again. How could it bear to let her bear the danger? Back then, she had directly sent it out in order to save its life. In the end, seeing Dumpling's sad and pitiful eyes, Chu Liyue's heart softened. Okay, I won't scold you anymore. Go back and recuperate first, okay?" Dumpling nodded. Its figure flashed and returned to Chu Liyue's body to recuperate. In fact, divine beasts had strong self-healing abilities. This kind of injury could be healed in a short time. Chu Liyue took a deep breath and looked at the heavenly square cauldron. A huge black phantom suddenly appeared in front of her. Whoosh! Its wings flapped. Its momentum was astonishing. It was the legendary three-eyed eagle. Compared to before, its phantom seemed to be more solid. Chu Liyue looked at its eyes steadily. "Are you ready?" The legendary three-eyed eagles, usually indifferent eyes, finally revealed a glimmer of excitement. Even if it was cold and indifferent, it couldn't help but feel emotional at this time. It had been suppressed for thousands of years and was tortured in pain every day and night in the heavenly square cauldron. It almost couldn't take it anymore. It had imagined the scene of reconstructing its physical body countless times. But even it didn't have much hope and just treated it as a fantasy. Those who could do this in the world were all top-notch figures. How could Chu Luiyue do it alone? However, it didn't expect this day to really come and so soon. Chu Luiyue asked, "I'm ready." "I'm ready. How about you?" The legendary three-eyed eagle nodded lightly. Chu Luiyue pursed his lips slightly. "Then I'll start." When the two-Tian baby was kept in the heavenly square cauldron by Chu Luiyue, and the realm of the gods completely collapsed, the mystic forest outside was peaceful. In the quiet forest, a light breeze blew. Qini was originally sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed to rest, but when he heard this movement, he suddenly opened his eyes. In his long and narrow eyes, a glimmer of light flashed quickly. There seemed to be some movement just now. He had set up an inescapable net in this forest, so he could sense any changes in the mystic forest. However, after sensing for a while, he didn't discover anything. It seemed like it was just an illusion just now. Qini knitted his brows and stood up. The few people at the side looked over. Lei Laosi asked, "Big brother, what's the matter?" Qini shook his head. "Nothing. I'll go ahead and take a look." As he spoke, he walked towards the mother tree. The surroundings were quiet, and there didn't seem to be any changes around the mother tree. However, Qini knitted his brows even tighter. "I shouldn't be hallucinating." Roar! A roar suddenly came from above. Everyone raised their heads in unison, and saw a muscular figure flying over at high speed. Lei Laosi exclaimed, "It's the legendary fiend that roared just now." Qini squinted his eyes. Could it be that it caused that movement? In the dim space, a black figure flitted past quickly. Very quickly, Rongxiu saw that familiar figure below. However, it seems like she's fine. Chu Luiyue seemed to have sensed something and suddenly looked up. The two of them met each other's eyes and looked into each other's eyes. Chu Luiyue's heart suddenly skipped a beat. Digression. Update at 6 p.m. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 794. This pair of eyes actually gave her a very familiar feeling, as if she had seen them somewhere before. At first glance, they were as deep as the night sky, with some kind of fatal attraction. Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, and a name seemed to be about to slip out of her mouth. "You." However, at this moment, the man calmly turned his gaze away. There seemed to be a faint layer of mist in the depths of his eyes, covering those soul-stirring eyes. Chu Luiyue suddenly came back to her senses, and carefully sized up the person who had come. This was a mysterious man wearing a black brocade robe, and a silver-white mask on his face. He was suspended in midair, looking down at her. Because he was completely black, and had no extra accessories, he almost merged with the dark space behind him. She could barely make out that his figure was very tall. As for the rest, she couldn't see anything. Chu Luiyue stared at him for a while and suddenly blurted out, "First Master?" After a short silence, the man finally spoke, his voice low and lazy. "You have good eyesight." It was indeed him. Chu Luiyue was actually shocked. She had never seen this person with her own eyes, but she had heard his voice last time, in Yao Qin's Imperial mausoleum. Now that she saw him, she didn't know why, but she felt that this person gave her a similar feeling to the first master that day. She had just asked tentatively, but she didn't expect to guess correctly. Chu Luiyue blinked, and carefully sized him up again. Unfortunately, the surroundings were dark, and she couldn't see anything clearly. He was also wearing a mask, so she couldn't see anything at all. However, she quickly restrained herself. In the face of such a person, this kind of gaze was inevitably a little offensive. After all, this was the first time they had officially met. Chu Luiyue retracted her gaze and glanced at the legendary three-eyed eagle and the heavenly square cauldron in front of her. Before this person came, she had just prepared to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body. She hadn't done much, but he had appeared. Through this translucent barrier set up by Taizu, he should be able to roughly see the situation around her. If it had been someone else, Chu Luiyue would have immediately put all these things away. Anyone with a bit of eyesight would be able to tell that the legendary three-eyed eagle beside her was not an ordinary magical beast. However, This person had a mysterious background and a powerful background. Chu Luiyue believed that he would definitely recognize the legendary three-eyed eagle. As for the heavenly square cauldron, although there was nothing special about it at first glance, there was no guarantee that he would know about it. Chu Luiyue was well aware of the principle of treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. However, the strange thing was that after recognizing that it was the first master, she actually heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. She didn't know why, but she was certain that he wouldn't steal her things. This feeling came out of nowhere, but that was what Chu Luiyue thought. Chu Luiyue didn't try to hide it even though this person could easily snatch her things away. Since he had already seen it, there was no point in hiding it anymore. If he really wanted something from her, why did he leave the Black Pyramid to her? Thinking of this, Chu Luiyue's heart moved. She bowed to the other party seriously. I have to thank the first master for the previous matter. The other party had helped her many times in the open and in the dark, so it was only right for her to thank him. However, the other party didn't respond to her words. Instead, he asked, "Are you planning to help the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its physical body?" Chu Luiyue's eyelids twitched. He really saw through it at a glance. She was secretly glad that she didn't think of deceiving the other party. She nodded and admitted frankly, "Yes. A fifth-rank warrior trying to help a mythological beast reconstruct its physical body. If this were to spread out, it would attract ridicule and disapproval from many people." However, the first master just nodded gently and didn't comment on it at all. Instead, he changed the topic and asked seemingly unintentionally, "This place should have been quite lively just now." The man's tone was lazy with a bit of carelessness. Chu Luiyue didn't care. The fight between her and the two Tian baby was indeed quite loud and left a lot of traces in the surroundings. She paused for a moment and asked tentatively, "First master, I have something to ask you. Do you know what was in the pyramid that was obtained in the Imperial mausoleum?" After Chu Luiyue asked, she nervously held her breath. This man must know something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have left a seal on it for no reason. But what was it? Chu Luiyue thought for a long time, but still couldn't figure it out. Now that she happened to see him, she naturally had to ask him. As the voice fell, the surroundings fell into silence. Chu Luiyue's heart seemed to be gradually clenched by something. Suddenly, the man swept down from above. Chu Luiyue didn't see his movements clearly, and saw that he had already appeared not far in front of her. The space at the bottom wasn't small. The enchantment that Taizu helped Chu Luiyue only occupied about half of the space here. Reconstructing the physical body was originally a meticulous and long-term work. In order to successfully complete it, one must try to avoid external interference as much as possible. However, there weren't many requirements for the size of the space. The man jumped down and landed on the other half of the empty ground. He stood in the dark, and Chu Luiyue could only see his deep and quiet eyes. He seemed to chuckle softly. "If I tell you now, then why did I leave the seal?" Chu Luiyue. It seems that the first master is unwilling to say. Actually, this was also expected. It would be strange if it was really so easy to find out. Just as he said, then there was no point in leaving the seal. If it's not convenient for the first master to tell me, it's fine. But this thing seems to be very important to you. So why did you leave it here? This was also a question that Chu Luiyue couldn't figure out. With his strength, wouldn't it be a piece of cake for him to deal with this thing? "I have my own reasons," the man said lightly, obviously not intending to explain. Chu Luiyue frowned slightly. This feeling of not knowing anything was really uncomfortable. Her tone also became cold. "Since it's not convenient for the first master to say anything, then I won't ask anymore. If he didn't say anything, then so be it. Perhaps one day, she would be able to unlock that layer of the seal and secretly find out what was inside. If there's nothing else, first master, please help yourself. I still have things to do, so I won't say much." With that, Chu Luiyue turned around, intending to start reconstructing the legendary three-eyed eagle's physical body. She didn't mind this person watching. Anyway, no matter what, she would do what she had to do. However, at this moment the man spoke again. "Wait." Chu Luiyue stopped what she was doing and turned to look at him. "First master, Do you have anything else to say? There was a hint of a smile in the man's voice. You helped me guard this thing. As a reward, I will also do you a favor. Do you want to take off the armor on your body yourself? Or do you want me to help you? Chapter 795. Pure Gold Armor? Chu Luiyue lowered her head and glanced at it. Just now, the two Tian baby had broken through the pure gold armor and left an inch-long crack on it. What did he mean? Your armor is not bad. If it's damaged, its defense will be greatly reduced. It's really a pity. Hearing this, Chu Luiyue asked with some uncertainty, Are you planning to help me repair this armor? The other party nodded slightly. You don't trust me? Chu Luiyue shook her head. That's not it. If you can help me, I don't know how to thank you. Previously, she had been worried about the damage to the pure gold armor. Generally speaking, if a yuan instrument was damaged, its effect would be greatly reduced. Most ordinary yuan instruments would be thrown away directly, while the higher grade ones would be repaired as much as possible. And this had high requirements for the person who repaired it. Very few people could do it perfectly. Therefore, the final result was usually barely satisfactory. Chu Luiyue didn't expect that he would take the initiative to help. Judging from his strength, he might be an expert in this aspect. Chu Luiyue hesitated for a moment before agreeing. Based on her current level, she couldn't completely repair the pure gold armor. She might as well let him give it a try. Anyway, the pure gold armor recognized its master. She wasn't worried that he would do anything. If he wanted to snatch something, he would have done it long ago. Why wait until now? Chu Luiyue had a thought, and a layer of faint golden light appeared on her body. Then, this light flew out and condensed into the shape of an armor in front of her. She waved her sleeve and sent the pure gold armor out. That man raised his hand, and the pure gold armor obediently landed in his hand. Rong Xiu looked at the pure gold armor in his hand and sighed. He wanted to help his wife, but he had to find such a dignified reason. It was tiring. He only took a glance, and immediately saw the damaged part of the pure gold armor. He couldn't be more familiar with this thing. Back then, in order to help her refine those glass barriers, he had done a lot of research. However, he still had to go through the formalities. Chu Luiyue watched as the other party held the pure gold armor in his hand. After examining it for a while, he prepared to make his move. A wisp of black origin power flew out from his palm and rapidly transformed into a cluster of flames. With a flick of his finger, the black flame flew to the damaged part of the pure gold armor and began to burn. This person seems to be extremely proficient in this Tao. Taizu's voice suddenly rang out. Chu Luiyue had actually seen through this. After all, she had personally polished the Cloud Sky Copper Sword before. Around the black flame, the pure gold armor glowed faintly. Then it became much softer. Chu Luiyue was secretly amazed. This person's control over the power of flames could be said to be peerless. The pure gold armor was hers, so she could naturally change its hardness according to her wishes. However, in the hands of others, it was usually just an ordinary piece of tough armor. This man does seem to know a lot about these things. Chu Luiyue calmed down and stopped looking at it. He turned his attention back to the legendary three-eyed eagle. There was no time to waste. Even if someone was beside her, she couldn't care less. She took a deep breath and removed all distracting thoughts from her mind. Then, a transparent karmic fire wrapped around the great phoenix dragon's skeleton and slowly floated out. After this period of tempering, the skeleton seemed to have become even more sparkling and translucent. At a glance, it looked like a top-grade jade. Chu Luiyue held her breath and concentrated. A scarlet flame flew out of her hand. The two flames instantly intertwined. It burned fiercely. Soon, a faint trace of blood appeared in the skeleton. Chu Luiyue's eyes lit up. That should be the bloodline power contained in the skeleton. As long as this power was completely stimulated, it could fuse with the legendary three-eyed eagle. Chu Luiyue carefully controlled it. The two flames burned evenly. More and more traces of blood appeared in the skeleton. A faint pressure spread out from it. Buzz! The barrier was hit and let out a buzzing sound. Chu Luiyue frowned. The bloodline power contained in the great phoenix dragon's skeleton wouldn't break through this barrier. Right? Wouldn't that be troublesome? Just as she was thinking about how to deal with it, a fluctuation suddenly came from the side. A layer of faint black enchantment covered the previous enchantment. The buzzing sound instantly disappeared. With 2 layers of barriers, the movements inside would not be transmitted to the outside. Chu Luiyue looked sideways. Thank you, First Master. However, the man only waved his hand lightly, as if he didn't care. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. There seemed to be more and more mysteries about this person. However, she didn't dwell on it for long and quickly continued. With the support of this barrier, the surrounding space became much more stable. Chu Luiyue's heart also became much more at ease. Rong Xiu's fingertips moved slightly. In the black flames, a golden light slowly flowed out, covering the inch-long damage on the pure gold sacred armor. His movements were very subtle. From Chu Luiyue's side, it was absolutely impossible to see this scene. He calmly raised his eyes and glanced at his wife. She was concentrating on condensing the great phoenix dragon's skeleton. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly. Oh, she seemed to trust him too much, right? She actually dared to take out the great phoenix dragon's skeleton so ostentatiously? Wasn't she worried at all? Since when did she trust other men so much? Thinking of this, Rong Xiu's mood suddenly became a little bad. Digression. It's already February here, Kevin. I'll go and sort it out. There's still a little at night, about 10 o'clock. Everyone can look at it together tomorrow. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 796. Mystic Forest. A white lion was floating quietly in midair. Qin Yi and the rest looked up at it. After a while, Lei Laosi couldn't help but ask, Big brother, what kind of fiend is this? Why is it staying up there all the time? They originally thought that it was going to charge down, but it actually stopped there after circling around twice. It didn't leave or come down. This caused the few people below to be at a loss as to what to do. Qin Yi also found it strange. Previously, he felt that there was a commotion in the mystic forest, and then this white lion appeared. When it stopped in midair, there wasn't any commotion in the surroundings. He could basically confirm that the commotion just now was caused by its arrival. However, he couldn't quite tell what kind of fiend it was, and didn't know why it didn't do anything after coming here. However, judging from the current situation, it didn't seem to have any murderous intent, so it probably didn't come for them. Ignore it first. Alright. It's a legendary fiend after all, so we have to be careful. Lei Laosi scratched his head and muttered. A fiend that looks like a legendary fiend. Why have I never heard of a divine beast that looks like a white lion? When Yi Ranran heard this, he couldn't help but say, Big brother Lei, is that a white lion? Its body seems to be yellow. Xue Xue, who was blocked outside by its master, was filled with resentment. It couldn't advance or retreat, and secretly thought that its life was tough. When it heard this, its heart instantly trembled, and it couldn't wait to run away immediately. How embarrassing! Its originally perfect snow-colored fur was now stained with countless layers of yellow sand, and became a dirty yellow color. Xue Xue roared resentfully. Roar! The forest shook instantly. However, the few people below weren't affected much. Yi Ranran was shocked and tugged at Mu Hongyu's sleeves. Hongyu, why do I feel like it's angry at me just now? It was originally a white lion, and it came from the Red Moon Desert, which is why it became like this. It definitely heard what you said just now, so it's naturally unhappy. Qin Yi turned around and explained. Don't forget that legendary fiends have almost the same level of intelligence as humans. Yi Ranran shrank back. So even divine beasts care about such words. Mu Hongyu gently patted her shoulder. Don't worry, Ranran. I don't think it has any ill intentions towards us. Although it roared, none of them were affected by this power. It could be seen that it had deliberately avoided it. Only then did Yi Ranran feel relieved. Suddenly Chang Wanzhou stood up. His movements were very fast, and even a little hurried, which immediately attracted the attention of a few people. Qin Yi seemed to have predicted something. What's the situation? Chang Wanzhou's eyes seemed to sparkle. I think she should be coming out soon. The West Hill. Imperial Palace, Huayang Palace. Shang Guanwan was leaning against the bed. Chani was kneeling beside her, feeding her medicine. Your Highness, this is the last decoction for today. Please drink it. As Chani spoke, she carefully scooped a little with a spoon and brought it to Shang Guanwan's lips. Shang Guanwan's lips were pale as she weakly drank the medicine. The moment she took a sip, her slender brows immediately knitted tightly together. The bitter and fishy taste rushed straight at her, almost choking her. She forced herself to swallow this mouthful of medicine. Her stomach churned again, and she almost spat it out. But in the end, she still forced herself to swallow it. Chani didn't dare to say anything else, and continued to feed her medicine carefully. By the time Chani finished feeding her this bowl, a thin layer of sweat had already formed on her forehead. She hurriedly put the things away and smiled pleasingly. Physicians was said that your body has already taken a turn for the better. After you use this medicine today, you'll have to change the dressing tomorrow. As long as you rest well, your body will definitely recover as soon as possible. When Shang Guanwan heard this, she seemed to be unmoved. Gradually, a hint of mockery appeared in her eyes. She slowly touched her face and asked softly, "What did he say?" "Then did he say when the scars on this consort's face would heal?" Chani lowered her eyes. "Physicians was said that the scars on your face are a little troublesome, and that you need more time." Shang Guanwan sneered. "Do you really think this consort is stupid?" Chani paused. "Your Highness, you're very fortunate. You'll definitely have a way. You may leave." Shang Guanwan was already tired of hearing this kind of argument, so she waved her hand in annoyance. Chani could only take her leave. "Then this servant will stand guard outside. If there's anything you need, feel free to tell this servant." After saying that, she respectfully left. The moment the door closed, Shang Guanwan's expression instantly turned cold and resentful. Actually, her face was covered in scars right now, so she couldn't make any sort of expression. She also didn't dare to move carelessly for fear of tearing open the scabs on her face again. She could only vent all her emotions through her eyes. In the past few days after returning to Western Tomb, she had been living a life worse than death. That day, after that torment, her vitality had been greatly damaged, so she could only lie in bed to recuperate. She had used up a lot of her origin power, but fortunately, her Yuan meridian hadn't been damaged. This made Shang Guanwan feel a little better. But in the end, she discovered something even worse. The scars on her face seemed to be much more serious than normal wounds. No matter what method she used or what medicine she tried, there didn't seem to be any obvious effects. Every time she thought it was going to heal, it would mysteriously fester again. This happened over and over again. Her face was already completely unrecognizable. As a result, she could only hide here and not come out to meet anyone. Shang Guanwan was both angry and afraid. If her face really couldn't heal, what would she do in the future? She could still delay it for now, but she would definitely have to come out in the future, especially since her wedding with Jiang Yuqing was getting closer and closer. On the day of the wedding, she still had to meet all the civil and military officials. Knock knock. A somewhat hurried knocking sound suddenly came from the door. "Your Highness, this servant has something to report." What could happen at this time? Shang Guanwan frowned. "Come in." Chani pushed the door open and walked in quickly. Her expression was a little strange. Just as she walked to Shang Guanwan's bed, she directly knelt down. "Your Highness, the prince consort and the others are back." Shang Guanwan was shocked. How could they be so fast? How long had it been? Not even half a month, right? Could it be that they had retrieved the dancing lotus so smoothly? Where are they now? "I heard that the prince consort was injured and has returned to the Jiang residence to recuperate. The others are waiting for you in Minghua Palace." Shang Guanwan's heart sank and she quickly asked, "Has the dancing lotus been retrieved?" Digression. Good night, everyone. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 797. Chani hung her head even lower. It seems like there isn't. If they had succeeded in retrieving it, they would definitely send news immediately. But now, Jiang Yuqing had returned to the Jiang residence to recuperate, and the others were already waiting in Minghua Palace. No one mentioned the dancing lotus. Basically, it was certain that they had returned empty-handed this time. Shang Guanwan suddenly sat up straight. Shocked and furious, she widened her eyes and spoke sternly. Nonsense! These people are all top figures in the Tianling dynasty. How can there not be anything? Jian Shai, Yuqi Song, Song Wan. Which one of them wasn't a famous figure? Even Grand Tutor Xiahou Rong was a peak stage 7 warrior. When these people joined forces, their strength was terrifying. How could there be no gains? With this movement, Shang Guanwan's injuries started to hurt again. The scab on her face cracked again, and blood slowly flowed down. It was very painful. She sucked in a cold breath. Her body was in a terrible condition, and with her anger attacking her heart, she directly fell backward. "Your Highness!" Chani exclaimed and hurriedly went forward to support her. "Your Highness, you have to recuperate properly. Don't get angry." Shang Guanwan's face was pale, and 2 balls of flame seemed to be burning in her eyes. She pushed her away. "Get lost! Useless trash! Get lost for this consort! Don't get angry?" How could she not get angry after hearing this news? Chani hurriedly knelt down again. Actually, she was also shocked when she heard this news just now. Who would have thought that these people would return empty-handed after joining forces? Chani had already expected Shang Guanwan's reaction, but she had no choice. This was a serious matter, and she didn't dare to hide this from Shang Guanwan. Besides, could this kind of thing be hidden? Jian Shai and the others were still waiting in Minghua Palace. "Why, Your Highness, you must calm down. Minghua Palace is still waiting for you to preside over the situation." It wasn't just Minghua Palace. Now that Jiang Yuqing had returned to his residence to recuperate, there were bound to be many things that Shang Guanwan had to deal with personally. When Shang Guanwan thought of this, her mind was in a mess. Preside over the overall situation? Was she supposed to meet people with her current face? Shang Guanwan was full of resentment. She couldn't figure it out. Everything was fine before. So why did everything suddenly become so out of the blue? She had thought that after setting the wedding date, she would be able to wait for the wedding in peace. But in between, things kept happening one after another. Her face, Jiang Yuqing's wound, the black cavalry with heavy casualties. There was also the dancing lotus that couldn't be retrieved no matter what. Once the news got out, she didn't know what people would say about her incompetence. Previously, for the sake of creating a good reputation for herself, she specially brought so many people with her to the great desolate swamp. In the end, he came back in a sorry state. She had hoped that they would be able to bring the dancing lotus back this time. That way, she would be able to answer to the outside world. Who would have thought that it was all in vain? From the looks of it now, however much fanfare she made back, then was how much of a disgrace she was now. Shang Guanwan suppressed the anger in her heart with much difficulty and said coldly, "Just say that I'm recuperating now and can't go out. Just invite Song Wan alone to come and see me. As for the others, it's been hard on them this time. Let them go back first." Yes. After Jiang Yuqing returned to Xiling, he rushed back to the Jiang residence immediately. In the room, Feng Shangyuan placed one hand on Jiang Yuqing's wrist. His brows gradually furrowed, and his expression became very solemn. After a while, he released his hand and looked at Jiang Yuqing, unable to conceal the shock in his voice. "Eldest young master, your body. It was just a trip to the great desolate swamp. It had only been a few rounds. Why did his injuries suddenly become so serious? Did someone fight with you?" Feng Shangyuan asked very tactfully. Jiang Yuqing nodded, but didn't elaborate and only frowned. "Is there a way to recuperate as soon as possible?" Feng Shangyuan sighed. "Eldest young master, you know your own body best, don't you? I'm afraid that you won't be able to recuperate completely, without at least half a year. When it rains, it pours." Jiang Yuqing's expression became increasingly gloomy. His body had been continuously injured recently, and it was already extremely difficult to recuperate. Now that this was added, it would probably be even harder to recover. From start to end, that man only extended one finger. However, he didn't even have the slightest ability to retaliate, and could only be completely crushed. Jiang Yuqing had never deeply experienced what it meant to be a natural chasm like now. In comparison, He was like a tiny ant, lowly and incompetent. Jiang Yuqing was born to be favored by the heavens, and had always been stronger than others. When had it ever been his turn to be treated like this? What made him even more uncomfortable was that that man in black didn't seem to care about him at all. The greatest form of contempt was indifference. Jiang Yuqing felt as if there was a stone in his heart, and he was extremely stifled. Feng Shunyuan was right. He did know his own body's condition best. Is there really no other way? He asked again with a sullen face. He definitely couldn't afford to delay for half a year. The wedding day was getting closer and closer, and there were too many things to do. Feng Shunyuan thought for a long time and finally said, "If you really want to, it's not completely impossible. It's just that I'm afraid you'll have to suffer a little." Then let's begin. Minghua Palace. Jian Shai and the others sat on both sides, and the main hall was silent. No one expected that the trip to Dahuang Swamp would end so carelessly. After they were chased out, they originally wanted to go again, but they found that the teleportation array had been sealed. This time, they had no other choice but to return. As for the dancing lotus, there was naturally no need to think about it anymore. They were all important figures in the Tianling dynasty, and their strength was superb. Who knew that they would end up in such a situation in the end? It was somewhat embarrassing. Jiang Yuqing was sent back to the Jiang residence to recuperate, and they went to the palace first. They planned to inform Shangguan of the matter first, before letting her make a decision. Soon, someone came from outside. A palace servant hurried forward and greeted them one by one. Then he said to Song Wan, "Her Highness the Third Princess is not feeling well now, and it's not appropriate for her to see all of you at the same time. Therefore, please go to Huayang Palace first." The few of them were not surprised by this. Song Wan was originally closer to Shangguan Wan, so it was normal for her to ask him to go over. Jian Shai couldn't help but ask, "How's the third princess's health? So many days have passed. Hasn't she gotten better?" It had been almost half a month since she had returned. It was said that she had been staying in Huayang Palace for the past half a month, and almost never came out. Many things were handled in Huayang Palace. What kind of injury did she suffer that was so serious? One had to know that with her current status. It was easy for people to guess if she didn't show up for such a long time. It just so happens that Elder Song and I are both celestial physicians. Why don't we take a look at the third princess together? What do you think, Elder Song? Chapter 798. Yuqi Song nodded. That's good too. The third princess has a precious body, so we naturally have to take good care of her. The palace servant didn't expect them to say this, and looked troubled. Miss Chani only said to invite Sect Master Song. I don't dare to make a decision. In the palace, who didn't live under Chani's orders. Chani had always been very strict with matters related to the third princess. If he brought these two over, Chani wouldn't dare to say anything about their status, but his own safety was hard to say. Jian Shai sneered and said jokingly, Chani trusts Chani deeply. We all know that Chani is deeply trusted and valued by the third princess. However, in the end, she is only a servant girl. Could it be that we need her permission to see the third princess? The palace servant hurriedly knelt down. That's not what I meant. It's just, what's there to just about? We're also concerned about the third princess's health, so we specially went to visit her. If the third princess really can't see us when we reach Huayang Palace, we naturally won't force her. This sentence made the palace servant speechless. It was fine if it was others, but Jian Shai and Yuqi Song were both top celestial physician in the Tianling dynasty. It was indeed reasonable for them to propose to take a look at the third princess. Xiahou Rong frowned slightly and said, Actually, we don't have to go. After all, there are still Zhuo Mingxi and a few other lords in the palace with superb medical skills. If we go now, we might disturb them instead. Yuqi Song interrupted him indifferently. Everyone is very worried that the third princess hasn't come out for a long time. Now the eldest young master is injured and bedridden. If no one comes out to preside over the situation, it will be chaotic sooner or later. We're doing this for everyone's sake. Could it be that we'll harm the third princess? At this point, what else could the palace servant say? He could only bite the bullet and agree. Xiahou Rong's lips moved. He wanted to continue stopping them, but he couldn't think of any reason. Jian Shai glanced at him and chuckled. Lord Xiahou, you don't look too good. Are you tired from this trip? Why don't you go back and rest? Xiahou Rong immediately rejected this suggestion. Since all of you are going, how can I not go? When they returned, Jiang Yuqing didn't want Jian Shai and Yu Qisong to enter the palace. Obviously, he didn't want them to see the third princess. Now that he saw that he couldn't stop them, he naturally had to follow them just in case. Therefore, they followed the palace servants to Huayang Hall. Soon, they arrived at their destination. Chan Yi, who was anxiously waiting outside the door, froze when she saw them arrive. The palace servant jogged over and explained the situation to Chan Yi while trembling with fear. The lords were worried about His Highness' health, so they came together and said that they wanted to take a look at His Highness. Chan Yi was shocked. Are they going to treat third princess? How could that be? Now, the third princess could not be seen in public at all. If these people were to see this, who knows what would happen? She first bowed respectfully to them, before tactfully saying that it wasn't convenient for Shang Guanwan to meet so many people at once. Other than Song Wan, she could only invite the rest of them back. Jian Shai sneered in his heart. How was it that she didn't want to see people? She clearly didn't want to see him and Yu Qisong. At first he was just curious, but now, he also felt that something was amiss. If Shang Guanwan wasn't guilty, then what was? Even if her health wasn't good, it shouldn't be so difficult to see a few people. Besides, his and Yu Qisong's medical skills were definitely among the top few in the entire Tianling dynasty. Yet, Shang Guanwan avoided them like snakes and scorpions. It was truly suspicious. Seeing that they were still unwilling to leave, Chan Yi could only say, Her Highness' health has always been taken care of by Lord Zhua and the rest. Could it be that you don't trust Lord Zhua? That's not the case. Jian Shai was about to refute when Yu Qisong suddenly said, Lord Zhua, our medical skills are very good. Of course, we can trust Zhua Mingxi's medical skills. Since that's the case, let Her Highness rest well. We'll take our leave first. Then he really turned and left. Jian Shai froze for a moment and could only follow. Xiahou Rong heaved a sigh of relief and also left not long later. Soon only Song Wan was left. Chan Yi said, Sect Master Song, please. Elder Song, why did you suddenly leave? Jian Shai followed Yu Qisong and frowned, feeling perplexed. Elder Song must have also noticed that there was a problem. As long as he continued to ask, he would definitely be able to dig something out. However, Elder Song suddenly stopped. It was truly strange. Yu Qisong said, Since she's unwilling to see you, why force her? Aren't you worried? There was clearly something fishy going on. Who knew what exactly she was planning to do? Yu Qisong suddenly laughed. Isn't she the most worried about herself? Shang Guanwan was ambitious. Yu had only been gone for less than 2 years. But she actually planned to replace her, and even wanted to directly ascend the throne while Her Majesty was still unconscious. Anyone could tell what she wanted. She couldn't wait to hold all the power in her hands, afraid that others would snatch it from her. If she hadn't really encountered some trouble, why wouldn't she come out to meet people for such a long time? So many important officials in court could wait for a day or two, but they definitely couldn't wait forever. At this time, the most anxious person wasn't anyone else, but Shang Guanwan herself. Jian Shai froze for a moment before returning to his senses. You're saying? On the other hand, I'm old and incompetent. I couldn't even retrieve a dancing lotus for the third princess. I'm really ashamed. After speaking, Yu Qisong continued walking forward. There's still no trace of Lu Yu and the rest. I'd better return to Qingyuan Mountain and wait for their news. I won't get involved in other matters. Jian Shai clicked his tongue in his heart. Was Yu Qisong planning to spread the news that they didn't obtain anything from Dahuang Swamp? One could imagine how embarrassed Shang Guanwan would be then. He was indeed an old fox. In the past 2 years, Chongshu Pavilion had suffered a series of blows. Yu Qisong had also kept a low profile and endured a lot. He thought that they would never recover from this setback. Now it was finally a little more fun. He had an idea and stroked his chin. Hey, why don't I go and meet Zhua Mingxi? He might really be able to get something out of him. Almost overnight, the news that Shangguan had led troops to Dahuang Swamp, suffered heavy casualties, and failed to bring back a single heaven and earth treasure for the emperor spread throughout Shilling City. Later, she even specially sent Jian Shai and a few other top powerhouses to go, but they returned empty-handed. Although the palace had tried their best to suppress the news, it was basically useless. After all, their appearance on the day of their return had already attracted a lot of attention. For a time, rumors spread everywhere, and everyone in the city was talking about it. At Chun Feng Restaurant, Jian Fengqi leaned on the couch and smiled unrestrainedly. This time, our third princess has completely lost face. Chapter 799. Shui Lu held the pipa in her arms. Her slender hands swept across the strings, and a string of light and pleasant tunes followed. She had always played mournful or melancholic tunes, but rarely played such cheerful tunes. Moreover, there was a hint of a smile at the corners of her eyes, showing that she was in a very good mood. Who told her to puff herself up at her own cost? She only has herself to blame for her current situation. Shui Luer's fingertips paused, and her willowy eyebrows raised slightly. Does she really think that Dahuang Swamp is a place where everyone can go? Back when Dahuang Swamp was pacified, Princess's reputation soared. She also wanted to give it a try, wanting to establish herself as the world's most filial daughter. However, she didn't think about whether she had the ability to do so. Dahuang Swamp was an extremely difficult bone to chew. It had been chaotic for hundreds of years, and it was only when Princess came to power that it was finally suppressed. Why did Shangguan think that she could command the winds and clouds in Dahuang Swamp? She has been in this position for a long time, so it's only natural that she would have such thoughts. Jian Fengqi smiled disapprovingly, his eyes filled with contempt. Didn't you see how arrogant she had been in the past 2 years? Now this head-on hit had finally caused her to bleed. Shui Luer's red lips curled slightly. This position isn't for just anyone. I don't think she can stay here for long. That's not necessarily true. Didn't you see that the wedding is going through the procedures now? Jian Fengqi smiled wickedly. I really want to see what kind of scene it will be on that day. Shui Luer glanced at him and asked curiously, weren't you very worried about Chu Luyue and Mu Hongyu before? Why do you not look nervous at all now? That day, when he heard the discussions outside, his expression immediately changed. He jumped down from the window without a second word and grabbed the people to ask. Now it seemed as if nothing had happened. Jian Fengqi's expression stiffened, and he twisted his neck uncomfortably. Even now, when he recalled his reaction that day, he felt that he had lost his composure. No, it couldn't even be described as simply losing his composure anymore. No one knew the fear that suddenly rose in his heart at that moment. Even now it left a deep impression on him. However, these words were not easy to say. He coughed. I heard from Zhu Hong and the others that someone is helping Hong Yu and the others. There shouldn't be any problems. Actually, the reason why he was so relaxed was mainly because he saw that his father and Yuchi Song were very calm. The disciples that these two doted on the most were still in the great desolate swamp. Yet they didn't seem to be nervous at all, so he naturally felt much more at ease. Shui Luer nodded in understanding. From the looks of it, there shouldn't be any major problems. She pondered for a moment and said, by the way, I saw someone the other day, but I'm not sure of his identity. Jian Fengqi asked curiously, who is it? Shui Luer paused for a moment. She didn't say anything, and only made a hand gesture. She gestured a 7. Jian Fengqi's expression suddenly changed. He sat up and stared at her. Are you sure? Shui Luer bit her lips. I don't know if it's him. Whether it was their appearance, figure, or aura, they were all different. But the look in his eyes was too similar. Where did you see him? Jian Fengqi hurriedly asked. Outside the Xiaohou residence. He seemed to be investigating something too. Shui Luer frowned slightly. But if it's really him, how could he have changed so thoroughly? Jian Fengqi was shocked. How could an ordinary person have anything to do with the Xiaohou residence? He was silent for a moment then said, I've seen him before too. Digression. 6 o'clock mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 800. Oh, when was that? Shui Luer asked curiously. Why haven't I heard you mention such an important matter before? Jian Fengqi paused for a moment. Because I wasn't too sure at that time. Speaking of which, this happened back in country Yaochun. At that time, I accidentally saw a person's figure and vaguely felt that it was very similar. However, I didn't see him again after that, so I put this matter aside. He also wanted to see that person again to confirm that person's identity. However, no matter how hard he looked, there was no trace of that person. It had been quite a long time. If Shui Luer hadn't suddenly mentioned it, he really wouldn't have remembered. You said you saw that person in Xiaohou residence? Yes. That day. I originally planned to go to Xiaohou residence to inquire about the news. However, after meeting that person, I felt that it was a little strange, so I didn't make a move for the time being. Later, I found out that he was indeed secretly watching Xiaohou residence. However, his movements were extremely concealed, and ordinary people wouldn't be able to discover him at all. If it wasn't for the fact that she felt that person was inexplicably familiar, she wouldn't have noticed that person. Jian Fengqi waved the bone fan in one hand and narrowed his eyes. Xiaohou Rong is the grand tutor, and there are many guards inside and outside Xiaohou residence. Outsiders definitely wouldn't watch them for no reason. Since he did this, there must be a purpose. If it's not that person, then we have to investigate carefully to see who else is planning to make a move on Xiaohou residence. However, if it's really him, then we have to investigate even more carefully. We don't even know when he came back. As Jian Fengqi spoke, he put away the bone fan and rested his chin on it. However, it seems that Jiang Yuqing has been really busy during this period of time. He actually didn't notice that something was wrong at all. Shui Luer chuckled. I heard that he went to Dahuang Swamp again and was injured. He's now recuperating in Jiang residence. I really don't know who did it. If I can meet him, I have to thank him properly. I heard from my father that that person is extremely powerful, not to mention Jiang Yuqing. Even the few of them are no match for him. Jian Fengqi's voice was much more serious. Shui Luer was a little surprised. Only then did she remember that Jian Shai also went with them, so he must know a lot of inside information. She widened her eyes in shock. It can't be more powerful than those few people? What kind of person is that? In the entire Tianling dynasty, there are only a few of them. Jian Fengqi. My father and the others didn't see what he looked like. He was wearing a mask. But he seems to have only attacked Jiang Yuqing, and he's still rather polite to my father and the rest. Jiang Yuqing's injuries are quite serious this time, so he shouldn't be able to cause any trouble for the time being. Little Luer, find some time in the next 2 days to go to the Xiaohou estate and inquire about that person's background. Jian Fengqi stood up and patted his robe. As for me, it's been a while since I've been to the palace. Why don't I visit our honorable third princess? Jian Fengqi strutted into the palace and went straight to Huayang Palace. Unsurprisingly, he was stopped outside. Over the past few days, most of the people who asked to see Shang Guanwan returned without success. Only a few people were allowed to enter the main hall to see her. However, they didn't stay for long each time. The palace kept announcing to the public that Shang Guanwan was injured while helping His Majesty get medicine and needed to rest. Although everyone had many guesses, Huayang Hall was heavily guarded, so they couldn't know what was going on. They could only continue to wait. Jian Fengqi wasn't surprised by this result. Previously, his father had taken the initiative to ask for help, but was rejected by Shang Guanwan, let alone him. Jian Fengqi didn't pursue the matter. This young master is actually worried about the third princess. Since the third princess wants to rest, this young master won't disturb you any further. With that, he turned around, intending to leave. Chani was a little surprised. Jian Fengqi's personality was actually very difficult to deal with. She thought that it would take a lot of effort to persuade him to leave, but she didn't expect him to leave so straightforwardly. However, just as he took half a step, Jian Fengqi turned around again, a careless and evil smile on his face. That's right. This young master suddenly remembered that this young master borrowed a few medical books from the Empress and didn't return them. Since I'm here today, I want to make a trip to Xiaoyu Hall and return them. Chan Yi's eyelids twitched. The Empress medical books? She's already dead. What's there to return? Moreover, it's been almost 2 years. No one would care about such a thing. She sized up Jian Fengqi suspiciously, feeling a little uneasy. However, Jian Fengqi had a smile on his face. He was no different from before. He didn't seem to be looking for trouble. Chani pondered for a moment. Xiaoyu Hall was the Empress' resting place when she was alive. The third princess has always ordered people to watch over it carefully. No one is allowed to damage anything inside, and no outsiders are allowed to enter. This servant will help you ask for permission. Please wait a moment. Jian Fengqi nodded with a smile. Go on, go on. Chani turned around and entered the room. Jian Fengqi raised his brows slightly and looked around the courtyard casually. It seemed like there were some changes after not coming here for a while. Although he didn't come here often, he had a photographic memory. He remembered every blade of grass and every tree here clearly. He walked to a tree and leaned against it. Suddenly, the tip of his nose twitched. A faint bitter and fishy smell was faintly discernible. He lowered his eyes and took a look. This smell seemed to be coming from underground. He took a closer look, and his pupils suddenly shrank. He's going to Xiaoyu Hall? Sheng Guanwan subconsciously frowned. Why did he go there all of a sudden? Sheng Guan, you have been dead for so long. What's the big deal about returning a few medical books? However, Jian Fengqi wasn't easy to deal with. If she didn't agree to his request, who knew what trouble he would cause? In any case, he had always been barefooted and wasn't afraid of wearing shoes. He was very unbridled and arrogant. Sheng Guanwan didn't want to attract such a big trouble at this time. She waved her hand in annoyance. Since he wants to go, let him go. There are plenty of people in Xiaoyu Hall. If they discover anything strange about him, immediately report it. Yes. Sheng Guanwan rubbed her forehead. Actually, Jian Fengqi had a good relationship with her in the past. He had spoken up for her many times and helped her a lot. However, for some reason, his attitude towards her had changed slightly after Sheng Guanyu's death. Although it wasn't obvious on the surface, Sheng Guanwan could feel it. She couldn't understand it. Jian Fengqi and Sheng Guanyu had been enemies in the past. They didn't like each other. Why did he suddenly become like this? Why was he going to Xiaoyu Hall now? Jian Fengqi gathered origin power in his palm. Just as he was about to reach out, he suddenly heard Chan Yi's vigilant voice behind him. Young Master Jian, what are you doing? Asked the user of the mobile phone. A better reading experience came from Love Network. Chapter 801. Jian Fengqi paused for a moment, then looked over as if nothing had happened. His expression was still as carefree and unrestrained as ever. Wasn't this young master waiting for you? His tone was lazy, and the last syllable had a hint of ambiguity to it. There seemed to be a glimmer of light flashing through her icy eyes. It was overflowing with light and color, making people feel as if they were about to drown in it. Chani's face inexplicably heated up. Even though she knew that Jian Fengqi was just teasing her, she still felt a ripple in her heart. All these years, Jian Fengqi's reputation as a womanizer wasn't just for show. According to what Sheng Guanyu had said, he was very good at coaxing young ladies. Jian Fengqi had always taken this evaluation as a compliment. Many times, using this kind of trick could save him a lot of trouble. Unfortunately, that stupid Sheng Guanyu didn't understand at all. However, Jian Fengqi was also glad that he hadn't actually made a move. Otherwise, he might not even be able to leave the palace today. After all, Chani was Sheng Guanwan's personal maidservant for many years. Her mental fortitude was much stronger than that of ordinary women. She quickly adjusted herself and said, Her Highness has agreed. Her Highness has already agreed. Sir Jian can go to Xiaoyu Hall now. Jian Fengqi nodded with a smile. Then I'll have to thank Her Highness and Miss Chani. After saying this, he walked away with relaxed steps. Chani glanced at where he had been standing and felt a little worried. However, when she thought about how everything had been done so smoothly and covertly, and how Jian Fengqi had only been standing there for a while. He probably wouldn't notice anything. Thus, she put the matter aside for the time being. For some reason, Her Highness's mood had been fluctuating between good and bad these past 2 days. She would decide whether to take the medicine master Swa had sent over based on her mood. However, what was surprising was that her body seemed to be getting better. Compared to the beginning, there was an obvious improvement. Chani didn't know the reason, but she didn't dare to ask. She only carefully served her. Based on the current situation, Her Highness should be able to recover very quickly. Jiang Yuqing was also recovering at an extraordinary speed. With Feng Shunyuan's help, his body was getting better day by day. The wound on his chest had already formed a scab, and it would be completely healed after a period of time. Even the wound on his lower abdomen was showing signs of healing. The burning pain did not appear again. This made Jiang Yuqing heave a huge sigh of relief. Jian Fengqi came to Zhaoyu Hall alone. Compared to before, this place was much more deserted, but there were still many palace servants here. Upon seeing Jian Fengqi, a palace servant quickly came to greet him. Greetings to young Master Jian. Obviously, they had already received the news. Jian Fengqi wasn't surprised and said honestly, "This young master is here today to return the Empress concubine's medical books." The palace servant hurriedly said, "Then this servant will take you there. This young master has been to this place many times. Do I need you to lead the way? This young master will go myself." Jian Fengqi interrupted the palace maid's words and walked straight in. He seemed to be walking slowly, but in fact he was very fast. He walked like the wind and soon arrived inside. Seeing this, the palace servant hurriedly chased after him and said, "Young Master Jian, you can't go to that room." Jian Fengqi stopped in his tracks. "Oh, why is that?" That was the Empress concubine's residence when she was alive. "You." The palace servant did not dare to say anything too unpleasant, and only stuttered for a long time. Jiang Yuqing did not think much of it. "Even if the Empress concubine is still alive, she may not be able to stop me. Why, do you want to try?" Although he was smiling, there was a bit of coldness in his eyes. The palace servants around him looked at each other. This young master is just going to return a few books. If you are worried that it will be difficult to explain, you can just follow this young master in later. This servant does not dare. If the third princess found out, his life would be in danger. Jian Fengqi lightly snorted. "In that case, when the door opens later, you can just watch from the outside. Won't that be fine?" The palace servants hesitated for a long time. Thinking that this was indeed the only way to compromise, they could only agree. Jian Fengqi walked inside. It was obvious that no one had been here for a long time. Everything was covered in a layer of dust. Jian Fengqi sneered in his heart. Shang Guanwan always bragged outside about how much she missed the Empress concubine, and how much she valued the Empress concubine's things when she was alive. In the end, she even guarded the place where the Empress concubine lived when she was alive. Although the door was open, Jian Fengqi's back was facing the people outside at this time. He quickly scanned the room. The smile on his face gradually disappeared, and his expression became serious. He walked to the desk, took out a few medical books, and placed them on the bookshelf behind. In fact, he did not make up the matter of returning the books. A few years ago, he did borrow a few books from Shang Guanyu. After all, the public had the most rare books in the entire Tianling dynasty. Shang Guanyu also liked to collect unique books. Jian Fengqi often came to her to ask for books to read. Sometimes he would even see her annotations in the books. However, he often forgot to return them. This caused Shang Guanyu to often make trouble for him. However, this time he had forgotten for so long. No one urged him anymore. He put the books away one by one. In the end, he accidentally bumped his arm, and a book next to him fell down. He bent down to pick up the book. Just as he was about to put it back, he saw that there was no title on the book's cover. The pages were slightly curled. It looked like it had been flipped through many times. He opened the book curiously. How many lines of words were written on the page? Jian Fengqi knew every word, but he did not understand what they meant when they were put together. However, this handwriting was indeed from Shang Guanyu. When did she leave this behind? The mystic forest. Time passed slowly. In front of Chu Luiyue, a huge corpse was suspended in midair. After a long period of tempering, the bloodline power inside had almost been completely stimulated. The bloodline power that looked like blood vessels gradually became clear and finally condensed into a blood bead in the middle. Although this blood bead was only the size of a longan, it contained an extremely powerful aura. The skeleton's original jade-white color gradually became transparent. When the blood bead condensed, Chu Luiyue let out a long breath. Her clothes were already drenched in sweat, and her lips were a little pale. This was the great phoenix dragon skeleton. It consumed a lot of energy to refine the power inside, especially when Chu Luiyue was only a stage 5 warrior. If not for the boundless force stored in her energy center, she would not have been able to withstand it. When the blood bead condensed completely, Chu Luiyue did not rest. Instead, she immediately threw in a few herbs beside her. At the same time, with a thought, a guqin appeared beside her. On the body of the guqin, there was a faint purple gold color that shone brightly. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, mobile users can browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 802. The Purplish Gold Bodhi Leaf. It lay quietly on the zither, its body covered in a layer of translucent red light. At first glance it looked like a crystal clear amber. Chu Luiyue carefully took it down, then put the zither away. She carefully examined the purplish gold Bodhi leaf in her hand. Although it was now trapped in this seal, she could still vaguely feel a vigorous life force. The purplish gold leaf glowed brightly. Chu Luiyue looked at the legendary three-eyed eagle and nodded lightly. Whoosh! The legendary three-eyed eagle flapped its huge wings. The surrounding aura surged. In the next moment, its third eye suddenly opened. A ray of red light shot out from within. It instantly enveloped the purplish gold Bodhi leaf. Crack! A faint cracking sound could be heard. A crack suddenly appeared on the seal outside the purplish gold Bodhi leaf. Immediately, the seal shattered, transforming into countless rays of red light that scattered in all directions. The purplish gold Bodhi leaf was completely exposed. It trembled slightly, then turned around and headed in another direction. It wanted to run. Chu Luiyue waved her hand, and a flame flew out from the heavenly square cauldron. It quickly formed a barrier in front of the purplish gold Bodhi leaf. The purplish gold Bodhi leaf sensed that something was wrong and hurriedly stopped. Just as it was about to run in another direction, the legendary three-eyed eagle flapped its wings again. An earth-shattering shriek rang out. Screech! This cry reverberated throughout the entire space, and did not dissipate for a long time. Reverence, admiration, longing. It sounded like a low chant from ancient times, with a heavy and ancient aura that shook one's soul. This was the summoning of the legendary three-eyed eagle clan to the sacred tree. The purplish gold Bodhi leaf seemed to have sensed something, and stopped trying to escape. Instead, it stood in place in a daze. Chu Luiyue inexplicably felt that there was a subtle connection between the legendary three-eyed eagle and the purplish gold Bodhi leaf. Although she could not see it, she could still clearly feel it. It was a connection that had dissolved into their bloodline, after tens of thousands of years of relying on each other. In the next moment, she saw Yi Qingling leap in front of the legendary three-eyed eagle. At this moment, the blood bead extracted from the great phoenix dragon skeleton had gradually merged with the other medicinal herbs. From the initial bright red color, it had turned into a rich reddish-black color. The legendary three-eyed eagle had been staring at the purple gold Bodhi leaf for a few years now. A moment later, the violet gold Bodhi leaf flew up slowly and stuck itself to its third eye. It was as if spring water had seeped into the frozen soil, dispelling all the chill. The purple gold Bodhi leaf instantly fused into the third eye of the legendary three-eyed eagle. The crimson color in the eye quickly melted like a cracked ice surface. Then, a layer of faint purple gold color spread out from it. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat when that eye turned from scarlet to a purple gold color. The third eye of the legendary three-eyed eagle had always been red in color, and it was filled with a fierce and cold aura. At this moment, the brutality and bloodiness inside had completely faded away. Instead, it was replaced by a shocking and incomparable nobility. cold, noble, and disdainful. That was the unique pressure of a divine beast. Most importantly, it contained a trace of tenacious vitality, and it was glistening brilliantly. While Chu Luiyue was still in shock, the legendary three-eyed eagle moved and flew in front of the great phoenix dragon skeleton. It swallowed the black-red blood bead in one gulp. At the same time, one of the bones slowly flew up and fused into the huge black phantom. A moment later, flesh and blood began to grow on the sparkling and translucent bones. Chu Luiyue immediately urged the surrounding flames to surge over. It completely surrounded the illusory figure and began to burn wildly. With the help of the flames, the growth of the flesh and blood seemed to speed up a lot. Not long after, the position of the bones formed the shape of a wing. The great phoenix dragon and the legendary three-eyed eagle were not of the same race. Tracing back to its roots, the true ancestor of the legendary three-eyed eagle was actually the immemorial divine beast, the crimson gold heavenly phoenix. This also caused the legendary three-eyed eagle to be unable to completely borrow the great phoenix dragon's skeleton. It could only choose a suitable one for its own use. Therefore, it only used this piece of bone to make its wing bone. However, the bloodline power in these bones had been completely refined by Chu Luiyue. Therefore, to the legendary three-eyed eagle, although it only used one skeleton, it had already turned all the power into its own. Chu Luiyue sent the remaining skeleton back to the heavenly square cauldron. Then the other half of the skeleton flew out. Back in the Tianling God realm, Chu Luiyue had actually obtained an entire set of bones. Taizu said that back then, in order to avoid being discovered by the great phoenix dragon race, the skeleton was divided into two parts. In the heavenly square cauldron, they were combined into one, but with the suppression of the heavenly square cauldron, there was no need to worry about this. However, when he took them out, Chu Luiyue deliberately separated them. Seeing that half of the wing was rapidly forming, Chu Luiyue took a deep breath and began to refine the bloodline power of this half of the skeleton. This process was actually very long. However, according to the legendary three-eyed eagle, it also needed a certain amount of time to completely fuse its soul with this skeleton. Therefore, Chu Luiyue still had plenty of time. The process that had been carried out previously was repeated again. When the flames surrounded the half of the skeleton and burned it to temper it, Chu Luiyue took out the second set of herbs from the long yuan sword. At this time, he couldn't help but be thankful that Taizu had left behind so many things. Otherwise, it would have taken a lot of effort just to gather these precious herbs. While Chu Luiyue was focused on helping the legendary three-eyed eagle reconstruct its body, on the other side, the Rong Xiu had already finished repairing the crack in the pure gold armor. It was smooth and looked almost exactly the same as before. It didn't look like it had been damaged before at all. If anyone saw this scene now, they would definitely be shocked on the spot. This was because a yuan tool of the level of the pure gold armor couldn't be completely repaired. However, the Rong Xiu had completely repaired it. This method could be said to be superb. Even Taizu, who was an expert in refining yuan tools, might not be able to do this. However, the Rong Xiu lowered his eyes and looked at the pure gold armor. He didn't seem to be satisfied. It was indeed a top-grade yuan tool. Unfortunately, it met the two-tian baby. Although it was repaired today, Chu Luiyue might encounter some kind of danger in the future. The Rong Xiu pondered for a moment and looked up at Chu Luiyue. She was concentrating on tempering the great phoenix dragon's skeleton. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, and a faint golden color appeared on his fingertips. Then, he left a palm-sized pattern on the pure gold armor. That pattern flashed slightly and quickly disappeared. It was impossible to tell if it was the same or not. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 803. Xiling. The lanterns were lit, and the moon hung high in the sky. Chunfeng restaurant was bustling with activity. However, Shui Lu stayed in her room alone and ignored everything outside. Today was her usual rest day, so she didn't welcome guests. Besides, she had something to do at night. She planned to make a trip to Xiaohou residence. Originally, She discussed with Jian Fengqi to go tomorrow, but after thinking about it, she felt that it would be more discreet to take action at night. As Xiahou Rong had already returned to Xiling, he had been staying in the residence for the past few days. A few days ago, she thought that Xiahou Rong would definitely be wary since he had just returned. Today they should have relaxed a little. As for that person's identity, it wouldn't be too late to confirm it when she had the chance. Shui Luer started to dress up. For safety reasons, she naturally had to change her appearance. She took out a thin human skin mask. Just as she was about to put it on, a familiar voice came from outside the door. "Where's Luer? Let her serve you." "Xiahou Tingan. Why is he here now?" And it sounded like he was a little drunk. Hearing the sound of someone going up the stairs, Shui Luer hurriedly kept her things. "Second young master Xiahou, you came at the wrong time today. Miss Luer is resting today. Why don't you let another lady come?" Mrs. Zhang tried to persuade her in a gentle tone. "I only want her to accompany me today. I don't want anyone else. Where is she? Ask her to come out." Perhaps it was because he was drunk, but Xiahou Tingan became more arrogant than usual, and even dared to make a ruckus in Chunfeng restaurant. Mrs. Zhang smiled and calmly stood in front of him. She seemed to be in a difficult position. "Second young master, it's not your first time coming to Chunfeng restaurant, and you know the rules here. Miss Luer wants to rest, and even I can't persuade her to come out. Her temper has always been very stubborn. Even if she forces herself to come out, she'll definitely spoil your mood. Recently we have a new lady here, and she's very good at playing the zither. Do you want me to bring her here?" However, Xiahou Chunan didn't listen and pushed her away. Bang! Nanny Zhang was pushed onto the railing, and her waist hurt from the impact. Xiahou Tingan chuckled in disdain and mocked her as he walked up. "Very good at playing the zither? What do you know? I've heard of the best zither in the world. Other people, how could they even be on the stage? Don't dirty my ears." Mrs. Zhang's expression changed slightly. She vaguely knew who he was talking about and suppressed the anger in her chest. She held her waist and followed him. "Second young master, this really won't do." Xiahou Tingan was very frustrated, and his face was filled with impatience. "What? This young master came to your little spring breeze house to have some fun. Do I need to look at your eyes? Listen to your orders?" He had heard enough at home. Scram! Just as he was about to make a move, a soft and sweet voice suddenly came from behind him. "Wait." Mrs. Zhang looked up and was taken aback. "Lua, why did you come out?" Shui Luer smiled gently. "I heard second young master Xiahou's voice from afar. Since second young master Xiahou wants to hear me, it's my honor. There's no reason for me to turn you away." As she spoke, she looked at Xiahou Tingan. "Second young master, please." Xiahou Tingan was then satisfied as he gave Auntie Zhang a warning look. "If you were half as sensible as Miss Luer, you'd be able to avoid a lot of trouble. Do you understand?" Auntie Zhang didn't react as she looked at Shui Lu, in confusion and shock. Today was her usual day of rest, not to mention a mere second young master of the Xiahou family. Even if the emperor came, I wouldn't come out to welcome him. In the past, when Shui Luer first came, there were people who bullied her, and some even wanted to humiliate her. But those people all stopped in the end, in all kinds of ways. From then on, almost nobody dared to be so impudent, and Xiling. Xiahou Tingan only dared to do this because he was drunk and muddle-headed. However, it wasn't that they couldn't handle it. They just didn't need Shui Lu, to come out personally. But Shui Lu just smiled. "Auntie Zhang, please invite second young master to the room over there. I'll pack up and come over." Auntie Zhang was confused, but she could only do as she was told. Xiahou Tingan strutted into the room. If he was more clear-headed, he would notice that something was amiss. It was a pity that he couldn't tell anything at this point. Instead, he thought that his identity had stunned them, and he was secretly delighted. After a while, Shui Luer indeed carried the pipa over. She gave Auntie Zhang a look. "Auntie Zhang, second young master has a distinguished identity. Please serve him the best wine we have." Auntie Zhang didn't know what she was planning, but she still did as she was told. Very quickly, the servants sent the wine over. Xiahou Tingan slapped it open, and the refreshing wine fragrance wafted over. It was the top-grade green bamboo leaf. Only Xiahou Tingan and Shui Lu were left in the room. Shui Lu asked very gently, "Second young master, what do you want to hear?" Xiahou Tingan thought for a while. "Just pick what you're best at." As he spoke, he started drinking again. Shui Lu's eyes sparkled, and she smiled in agreement. "Yes." Then, she gently strummed the pipa, and a melancholic sound could be heard. Xiahou Tingan's emotions were stirred, and he was very upset as he continuously downed a few cups of wine. Shui Lu stopped and knitted her brows as if she was worried. "Second young master, you don't seem to be in a good mood. Is something troubling you?" Xiahou Tingan's mind was a little giddy. When he heard this voice, he opened his mouth and said what was on his mind. "It's all because of the Jiang residence." Bang! He heavily slammed the wine cup on the table, and his face flushed red with anger. Shui Lu's eyelashes fluttered, and her voice was as gentle as the wind. "I'm just a weak girl, and I don't know much about this. I just hope that second young master can be more at ease and stop worrying about this." As if he heard a joke, Xiahou Tingan sneered. "I don't want to either, but that Jiang residence is too much." Who in Xiling City didn't know that Jiang Yuqing's biological sister, Jiang Yuji, was discussing marriage with Xiahou Tingan? The two families had a strong alliance, and this marriage was very beneficial to both parties, especially Xiahou Tingan. Just based on this marriage, he had already won against the other young masters in the Xiahou residence. What else could he be unhappy about? Shui Lu only asked a few questions, but she managed to get a lot of information out of Xiahou Tingan. She then knew that because Jiang Yuqing was injured, the marriage between the Jiang residence and the Xiahou residence started to be delayed again. They even said that they wanted to wait until after the third princess and Jiang Yuqing's wedding. This made the Xiahou residence feel that the Jiang residence didn't care about this marriage at all. They had already given in time and time again, so that they could settle this matter as soon as possible. However, the Jiang residence was insatiable. They actually still want the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. What a joke! Xiahou Tingan stuck out his tongue, and his voice was a little muffled. Since they already gave this to us back then, how can they ask for it back? They want to give the pill back to Jiang Yuqing? Dream on. Shui Lu was shocked. The 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. That's the princess's item. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 804. The 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill was a 9th grade pill left behind by Taizu, and it was extremely precious. Rumors had it that this pill had the effect of raising one's Yuan meridian level, so it had always been carefully kept by the Tianling royal family. There hadn't been a 9th grade celestial physician in the Tianling dynasty for hundreds of years, so one could imagine how precious this 9th grade pill was. Back then, when the princess was of marriageable age, the emperor gave this 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill as a gift to her. Everyone knew that the emperor had decided to pass the throne to the empress concubine. Ever since then, the princess had been in charge of keeping this 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. On one hand, she had the Tianjing Yuan meridian and didn't need this item. On the other hand, this 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill had a special meaning, and the Tianling royal family wouldn't let anyone use it. Instead, it would be passed down. But now, Xiahou Tingan actually said that the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill was in their residence. Shui Lu hurriedly looked down and hid the emotions in her eyes. Even if she was good at hiding her emotions, she almost couldn't control it at this moment. Even if Xiahou Chunan was completely drunk, she didn't dare to reveal any abnormalities. She took a deep breath in and paused for a moment before she finally suppressed the waves in her heart. At the same time, countless guesses surfaced in her mind. After the princess died, Jiang Yuqing and Sheng Guanwan were in charge of everything. Everyone naturally thought that the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill was in Sheng Guanwan's hands. As the princess's sudden death had a huge impact on everyone, everyone's attention was placed on the princess's death. Very few people cared about this 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. I didn't expect it to be in the Xiahou residence. Hearing what Xiahou Tingan said, this 9 clouds yuan recovery pill was originally given to them by Jiang Yuqing, but he wanted it back now. Both parties couldn't come to an agreement, so they had a conflict. Of course, Jiang Yuqing could have gotten this item. As for why he gave it to the Xiahou residents, only they knew. But this also confirmed what Shui Lu had always suspected and investigated. The Xiahou residents indeed couldn't escape from the princess's death. Now for some reason, Jiang Yuqing wanted the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill back. Bang! Xiahou Tingan suddenly fell onto the table, and the wine on the table spilled all over the floor. He was still muttering something under his breath. Second young master? Second young master? Shui Luer shouted twice, but Xiahou Tingan didn't respond. The gentle smile on her face faded, and she quietly walked over. In her blurred state, she heard his intermittent words. It's me, it's my 99. Shui Luer pondered. Seeing Xiahou Tingan's angry and indignant look, it was most likely because he had always thought that the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill was his. But now, Jiang Yuqing wanted to go back. Of course he wouldn't agree. Shui Luer's voice was even softer, and it carried an indescribable allure. Where is the 9 clouds yuan recovery pill? Xiahou Tingan's eyes were tightly shut, and his face was flushed red. He reeked of alcohol. Hearing this, his eyebrows twitched and he shook his finger. Here. Creak. The door was opened from the inside. Nanny Zhang, who was anxiously waiting outside, hurriedly looked over. Seeing that Shui Luer walked out safely with her pipa, she finally heaved a sigh of relief. She quickly walked forward and sized up Shui Luer. Then she looked over Shui Luer's shoulder. How is it? Are you okay? Shui Luer smiled. Second young master is drunk and has already fallen asleep. Don't let anyone come and disturb second young master. Nanny Zhang vaguely saw the corner of Xiahou Tingan's shirt. Hearing that there wasn't any movement inside, she felt more at ease. Why don't we send someone to send him back to the Xiahou residence? With his current state, people will definitely talk about him if we send him back. He might even cause trouble for us. If he wants to sleep here, let him sleep. This kind of thing was very normal for the young masters in Xiling City. As long as they didn't go overboard, their families wouldn't pursue the matter too much. Then, should we find someone to help him wash up and rest? Nanny Zhang lightly fanned herself. The smell of alcohol in the room was simply unbearable. We're still standing at the door. Who knows what it's like inside? It's really hard on Shui Lu. Okay. Call someone over. Shui Luer looked back and tucked her hair behind her ear as she chuckled. He's Xiahou Residence's second young master after all. His current state is too unbearable. We just have to serve him well today. Someone will naturally come to fetch him back tomorrow. Hearing her words, Nanny Zhang also felt that it made sense, so she nodded. Shui Luer yawned and covered her mouth with her hand. Her pair of watery eyes were very moving, and had a natural charm and gentleness. I'm tired today, so I'll go back first. The smell of alcohol on you is really strong. Shui Luer pouted her red lips lightly. I'll have to trouble Nanny Zhang for the rest. Then she hugged her pipa and walked back to her room. Nanny Zhang glanced at her and felt strange. Shui Luer had always looked down on people like Xiahou Tingan, but she was exceptionally patient today. She even endured the fact that the room was already so dirty and messy. However, she didn't think too much about it as Shui Luer's temper had always been hard to predict. She endured the smell and closed the door before calling someone over to clean up. The next morning, Xiahou Tingan was woken up by a commotion. Vaguely, he seemed to have heard Jiang Yuji's voice. He sat up with much difficulty, but his head hurt so much that it felt like it was going to split open. At this point, the door was suddenly kicked open by someone. Xiahou Tingan, come out! A person barged in with a face full of anger. It was Jiang Yuji. Digression, 6 o'clock, I want to add 20 more. Can you hear me singing? Dreams flew out one by one. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 805. Nanny Zhang and the rest hurriedly followed over. Looking at the scene in front of them, they didn't know whether to stay or leave, So they anxiously said to Xiahou Tingan. Second young master. Why you see, fourth Missy Jiang insisted on coming in. We couldn't stop her even if we wanted to. Xiahou Tingan rubbed his temples. His mind was still in a mess, and he didn't understand the situation in front of him. Yuji, why are you here? Jiang Yuji was so angry that her entire body trembled. Her originally pretty face was already a little distorted. She raised her hand and angrily pointed at Xiahou Tingan with a sharp voice. You still have the cheek to ask me why I'm here? Why don't you see what good things you've done? Xiahou Tingan, do you still have any shame? With Jiang Yuji's commotion, Xiahou Tingan instantly felt very embarrassed. Normally, he would let her do whatever she wanted in private. When she threw a tantrum, he would also tolerate it. However, she spoke to him in such a tone in public. She didn't leave him any face at all. Xiahou Tingan had a hangover and was originally feeling uncomfortable. This made him even more frustrated, and his face turned cold. What are you doing? Don't you see where this is? Is this a place you can come to? No matter what, Jiang Yuji is the Jiang family's fourth Missy. With such a status, she came to Chunfeng restaurant and acted so arrogantly. She doesn't even mind that it's embarrassing. I can't come? Why? Am I delaying your happiness? Jiang Yuji seemed to have completely lost her rationality as she sharply argued with him. Her eyes were red, and she looked furious. She gritted her teeth as she spoke every word. Xiahou Tingan closed his eyes and looked at the door. In just a short while, quite a few people had already surrounded the door, and they were all watching this joke. He forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart and said, Yuji, calm down. Yuji, calm down first. Let's close the door and have a good talk. He was begging nicely, but Jiang Yuji sneered as if she had heard a joke. Close the door? Why don't I close the door and let you continue being a playboy? Xiahou Tingan knitted his brows. What nonsense are you spouting? Before he could finish his sentence, a soft hand placed on his shoulder. A weak girl's voice came from behind him. Second young master. Xiahou Tingan's heart skipped a beat, and he immediately turned around. A girl who looked to be about 15 or 16 years old was leaning against the wall while hugging a blanket. She clutched the blanket tightly with one hand to cover her body, while her other hand carefully rested on his shoulder. Her fair and tender arms were like jade lotus roots, and there were a few vague red marks on her slender collarbone. It went without saying what it was. Xiahou Tingan was stunned. He almost jumped out of bed. Who are you? The woman's hair was disheveled, but one could still tell that she was extremely beautiful. Her skin was snow white, and her lips were cherry red, especially her pair of round eyes, with long eyelashes fluttering slightly. She was truly a pitiful sight, especially since there were still traces of tears at the corners of her eyes. It made people feel even more reluctant to say a harsh word to her. Hearing this, her eyes widened slightly, as if she couldn't believe it. Her body trembled slightly, and 2 lines of tears flowed down her beautiful face. Second young master, yesterday, I just wanted to help you wash up and let you have a good rest. But you grabbed my hand and didn't let go. And then, she bit her lips and looked as if she was about to die from embarrassment. She lowered her head and didn't say anything, but she kept crying. But even if she didn't say anything, the crowd could roughly guess what had happened. Looking at this woman's pitiful look, Xiahou Tingan's reprimand was instantly stuck in his throat, and he couldn't say anything. His heart was already in a mess. No wonder Jiang Yuji had such a reaction when she came in. No wonder her words were so harsh. I thought I was just hungover at Chunfeng restaurant, but it turned out to be. But I don't remember anything. Xiahou Tingan turned around anxiously and looked at Jiang Yuji. Yuji, listen to me. It's not what you think it is. Jiang Yuji only looked at him and the woman on the bed with resentment. What am I thinking about? Isn't the truth right in front of me? Do I still need to think about it? Xiahou Tingan, we haven't even gotten married. How dare you do such a thing outside? You've really disappointed me. The reason why Jiang Yuji liked Xiahou Tingan was largely because he was gentle, restrained, and well-mannered. He wasn't like those playboys in Xiling City, who were ignorant and incompetent. But now, this incident will spread throughout the entire Xiling City very quickly. Seeing Jiang Yuji's agitated look, Xiahou Tingan knew that she was furious. He hurriedly put on his clothes and walked over. Yuji, listen to me properly explain. Pack. His hand had just touched Jiang Yuji's hand when she harshly slapped it away. Don't dirty my hands. Jiang Yuji's face flushed red, and her voice was sharp as she said every word clearly. Xiahou Tingan, my Jiang residence's reputation has been implicated by you. If you like to do this, just do it. This marriage is cancelled. Xiahou Tingan's face burned, as if he had been harshly slapped twice in public. If it were any other time, he could tolerate whatever Jiang Yuji threw at him. It didn't matter if he admitted his mistake or begged for mercy. As long as he could coax her, he could do anything. But Jiang Yuji saying this in front of so many people was undoubtedly tearing off his face and harshly trampling on it. Is she using the marriage to threaten me? The hatred and anger that had accumulated in Xiahou Tingan's heart for a long time instantly exploded. His face rapidly turned cold, and he blurted out without thinking. So be it. Do you really think I can't do without you? I've long had enough of you. With this angry shout, the entire room instantly fell silent. Jiang Yuji was dazed, and her face instantly turned pale. She only wanted to vent the anger in her heart, and she only said the cancellation of the marriage out of impulse. This was because she knew that Xiahou Tingan was most afraid of her saying this. Originally, she just wanted to scare him, but she didn't expect him to directly agree. Also, what else did he say? At that moment, something in Jiang Yuji's heart suddenly collapsed. Her body swayed, and she almost fell to the ground. Someone supported her from behind and gently said, "Fourth Mississippi, Fourth Miss, are you all right?" Jiang Yuji turned around in a daze and saw a beautiful face. It was Shui Luer. Jiang Yuji immediately pushed her away in disgust. Nobody in Chunfeng restaurant is good. They're all cheap and flirtatious. Shui Lu didn't seem to care as she smiled and looked at Xiahou Tingan. Second young master, it seems like you haven't sobered up from yesterday. Don't you know that the truth after drinking is the most hurtful? Jiang Yuji instantly felt like she was stabbed by a knife. Truth after drinking. Xiahou Tingan is saying all of this from the bottom of his heart. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 806. Many pairs of eyes were watching them from outside the door. Jiang Yuji felt as if there was a dagger at her back, and she had never felt so embarrassed before. She glared at Xiahou Tingan with bloodshot eyes, and every word seemed to be squeezed out with her teeth clenched. Xiahou Tingan, you said it yourself. Don't regret it in the future. Then she turned around and ran outside. The crowd hurriedly moved aside. Jiang Yuji's figure quickly disappeared from Chunfeng restaurant. The crowd didn't speak for a long time. Shui Luer's lips curved up undetectably. Things are progressing more smoothly than I expected. I just sent a message to Jiang Yuji to lure her over. I originally wanted them to kick up a fuss and talk about the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. I didn't expect them to directly say that they want to cancel the engagement. This time, the Xiahou residents really did not have the slightest bit of justification. If they still want to marry the Jiang residents, they have no other choice but to take out the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill. This is more convenient. Shui Lu turned around and looked at Xiahou Tingan. He was standing at the same spot, and his face was pale. His expression looked very complicated. Drinking this wine was really worth it. Second young master, fourth Missy Jiang seems very sad. You should quickly chase after her. Shui Luer advised him considerately. The worry that just appeared in Xiahou Tingan's heart instantly disappeared. He coldly chided. She can leave if she wants to. What does it have to do with me? Shui Luer's expression changed slightly, and she smiled. Yes. Whatever you say is naturally what it is. Then, we'll take our leave first. If you have any instructions, feel free to tell us. Then, she turned around and smiled at the crowd. You can all leave. The crowd then left to busy themselves with their own matters. However, who wouldn't treat such a huge incident as a topic of conversation after bumping into it? Not long later, this good show at Chunfeng restaurant would spread throughout the entire Xiling city. Shui Lu waved at the girl in the room. Xiao Dai, come over. The girl called Xiao Dai bit her lips and silently picked up her clothes to wear. When she walked to Xiahou Tingan's side, she bowed and looked down. Today's matter was caused by Little Butterfly. It has nothing to do with anyone else. Xiahou Tingan originally knew that this matter was mainly his fault, and he couldn't blame the young lady. Hearing her say this, his heart ached even more. Xiao Dai continued, "Second young master and fourth young mistress Jiang are a match made in heaven. If there is any animosity between the two of you because of Xiao Dai really can't bear it. Xiao Dai is willing to go to the Jiang mansion to ask for forgiveness. As long as I can beg for fourth young mistress Jiang's forgiveness, Xiao Dai will do anything." Xiahou Tingan didn't feel good when he saw how she was willing to compromise for the greater good. When he thought of Jiang Yuji's arrogant and domineering vixen, he was filled with anger. They weren't even married yet. If they got married, who knew how much trouble they would cause in the future? "Why are you going to the Jiang mansion? Just stay here and wait." Xiahou Tingan thought for a moment and took out a cosmic ring. "From today onwards, you will follow me. However, you probably won't be able to enter the Xiahou residence. I will order someone to find a small residence, and you will live there in the future." Xiao Dai seemed to be overwhelmed by the favor, as she immediately knelt down and said that she didn't dare to. However, Xiahou Tingan was very insistent as he threw the cosmic ring down and left. "I want to go back and explain this to my father. I'm not going to get married to her." After Xiahou Tingan left, Shui Luer then went forward to help Xiao Dai up and smiled. "Xiao Dai, it's been hard on you." Xiao Dai stood up, and her eyes were clear and determined. Where was the previous gentleness in her eyes? "Ms. Luer, don't worry. Xiahou Tingan didn't take advantage of me. She didn't want to suffer like this." Shui Luer smiled. "Of course I'm aware of your capabilities. However, I'll have to trouble you in the future." Xiao Dai said firmly, "For your highness, I won't hesitate to go through fire and water." As expected, the commotion at Chunfeng restaurant quickly spread throughout the entire Xiling. When Xiahou Tingan returned to the residence, he realized that the atmosphere wasn't right. All the servants looked at him with fear and trepidation. Their expressions were strange. At this point, Xiahou Tingan knew that the news must have spread. He didn't need to think to know what was waiting for him. However, he had already made up his mind to never lower his head to the Jiang residence again. Even if Jiang Yuji was willing to continue with this marriage, he wasn't willing to. "You still dare to come back?" Xiahou Tingan hadn't even walked a distance when he saw Xiahou Rong angrily walking over. His heart skipped a beat, and he immediately explained, "Father, listen to me, Pack." Xiahou Rong harshly slapped him. Xiahou Tingan stumbled and directly fell to the ground. "You're trying to anger me to death." Xiahou Rong's face was green, and his chest heaved up and down violently. This unfilial son. He then grabbed Xiahou Tingan's collar and dragged him into the study. Xiahou Tingan wanted to say something, but his collar was tightly grabbed, so he couldn't say a single word. He had difficulty breathing, and his face flushed red. Bang! Xiahou Rong threw him to the ground. Xiahou Tingan fell so hard that his bones were about to crack. "Father, you're too disappointing." Xiahou Rong was so angry that his fingers trembled as he pointed at his nose and scolded. "Do you know that you gave the 9 Clouds Yuan recovery pill to someone else this time? Why do I have such a useless son like you?" Mystic Forest. Time passed day by day. There was still no movement in the forest. That day, when Chang Wanzhou said that Chu Luiyue was about to come out, the group of people was elated. In the end, they waited for a long time, but she still didn't come out. The few of them could only continue waiting. However, Mu Hongyu and the other two didn't forget to cultivate during this period of waiting. With Qin Yi and Lei Laoxi's patient guidance, they all had some breakthroughs. Especially Chang Wanzhou. His improvement was the most obvious. Qin Yi originally wanted to take a look at the seal in his body, but it didn't appear again after that day. Even though he felt a little regretful, Qin Yi didn't insist on taking a look at Chang Wanzhou. It's not too late to talk about this when Her Highness comes out. After all, Chang Wanzhou listens to me. After everything here was settled, it wasn't impossible to solve these problems bit by bit. At night, The blue-black night sky was deep and quiet, and a round moon hung high in the sky. Gradually, that moon was dyed with a tinge of red. In the red moon desert, rustling sounds could be heard. I've finally waited until now. If I don't see Lass again, I'm afraid I'll be much older. Lan Zhao's voice was still ethereal and pleasant. Let's hurry and leave. Diwu, where's Big Bao? I didn't see her either. She was just here. Lan Zhao suddenly thought of something and secretly cursed. He's gone ahead of us. This damn child. Underground. In front of Chu Luyue. The bloodline power in half of the skeleton was almost completely refined and condensed into a blood pearl. The legendary three-eyed eagle's body was almost half reconstructed. Chu Luyue stared intently, and her heart seemed to be tightly clenched by something. Just as she was about to continue, she suddenly heard a baby-like voice. You're... Chu Luyue's heart skipped a beat. It's that voice again. She immediately looked up. Digression, mobile users, please browse and read at 12 a.m. tomorrow. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.